6:30. Let's go. So welcome everyone and welcome back, Pat. Speakers, called meeting to order and approval of the agenda. And does anyone have anything to add?
I would like to add just a moment for announcements, so if that could be added to new business.
Yeah, we'll make that, well, why don't we just throw, yeah, we'll just do that first, right? That'd be pre-A,
Okay,
okay?
Yep.
Is that a thing?
We're gonna make
It's gotta be a thing, it's a pre-A. So, okay, anything else anybody wants to add to? No? Okay, let's have approval of the agenda then. Anybody want, thank you, Deputy Mayor, and, is there a seconder over here, Hancock?
Yeah.
Second with Councilor Jameson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And motion's carried. So we have our agenda approval of the minutes, May 13th. Anybody note any errors in that or omissions? No, we'll approve them and circulated. And the action items, so notice there is an update for the first one.
Yes, so Kristen's pulled it up and we will update the agenda package to include it. But the numbers got cut off for the update on the number of level 1 firefighters for Berwick. So there's 2 types listed there. Level 1 certified 9, and then there's level 1 trained, and they just haven't had time to write their exam or test. So when they do, they would become level 1 certified. So that would be 29.
Yeah, excellent. So the ICS trained is on another level above 2.
No, so ICS is the incident command system that council may have done that themselves. It's a level 1 is or 100 is usually a free online test that you can do yourself. And it's a prerequisite to all the other ICS system training, like 200, 300. And we do that as part of the emergency management preparation. So I have up to 300 and some other courses that go with it. And I think some of our staff have up to 200 as well, and ECC training. So that's emergency coordination center training.
Does Dan cover that?
Yes.
Does no Kristen voice say?
So Dan does, and he also does the basic emergency management, which is another prerequisite and one that he does. And if anyone hasn't done that course, he offers one every quarter. So if you are interested, let me know.
I'm interested.
Okay. I'll find the email and send it in. I wasn't sure who didn't have it.
I don't want to.
Okay, I'll send that in.
So send it to everybody and you
Yep.
can decide. I don't think I've ever taken one.
taken.
Would you have taken?
And
Oh,
You
okay.
might have taken it, like I took it 15 years ago. When I started in municipal government, but it never hurts to have it's a free course. It never hurts to have a refresher.
Yeah, well, for sure.
You
I
don't
don't
remember-
remember taking it. I probably don't remember anything that happened, so it's a really good.
So
So,
I'll send that, we'll get that information and send it out to everyone. The next one is.
okay, anything else from the action items?
I would just look to see if there's any questions on any of the.
Any questions of Jen on those? Hmm?
I guess mine will be just about there, assuming the process. Can we just call them, inform them if there's been vandalism at the park?
Yes, so the internal process that we're working on is more about who gathers any evidence or information and how long we keep that and what the process. So does anyone who comes across it just call, or do we get one person to be the person that makes the call and make sure the information is passed along?
Thank you.
Did that cover it, Katie? I think Taylor was.
Anything else? Okay, let's move on to our presentation. We're always glad to have our library presentation. We're very proud of our library and very honored to have the regional board as part of Berwick. So Julia, and okay, you're getting the clicker. Good.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for making time for me in your busy meeting schedule. For those of you who I may not have met, my name is Julia Merritt, and I'm the CEO of Annapolis Valley Regional Library. I'm here today to do a quick overview of the library's activities over the last fiscal year, as well as give you an update on the provincial library funding formula process. So I do continue to have good news to report in terms of community engagement and participation at the library. Last year, we changed our model for the summer reading challenge, in particular, making sure that we were delivering an equal number of programs to all 11 branches. And so I'm very delighted to report that participation in programs doubled over 2023. We had over 2,000 registered participants. And we also doubled our number of minutes read, which ended up at 2.3 million, which was an all-time high for the library region. So we hope to grow that participation again this year to combat summer reading slide and help families in our community stay connected with free programs. Also, last year, we registered over 3,700 new members, which means that we have over 25,500 active users. So that is nearly 1 in 4 residents in the Annapolis Valley region having used their card within the last 2 years. We're very happy about that as well. Also, we worked with 4 municipalities to eliminate the dinner hour closure. So Bridgetown, Lawrencetown, Middleton, and Fort Williams are now open for continuous hours of service, and there's no more 5 to 6:30 p.m. Closure. So we're very happy to be able to provide that after work time frame for people to come into the library. The long-term use trend, I also have similar good news. When we pull the numbers for circulation data from 2009 to 2024, we can see that the checkouts of books alone has increased by 30% over that time period, while the net population in the region has only increased by 10%. So that's just books alone. That doesn't speak to programs, walk-in traffic, use of the computers, or any other form of assistance that the library is providing. So it's a really great long-term trend that demonstrates just how important and relevant the library continues to be in people's lives. And I would note that there were 2 periods where you can see big bump outs, big increases in the usage during that 15 years. And the first was from 2015 to 2019, when 5 of the 11 branches were either renovated or rebuilt, of which Berwick was one. And then the second time was in 2022, when AVRL and the other 7 rural regions in the province joined to become a same page consortium. So we're sharing our physical collections together. So AVRL clients or patrons went from having access to 120,000 physical items to over 1 million. And so it's proof positive that investment in libraries is both welcome and very well used. Which brings me to the funding formula update. We did submit, and when I say we, I mean the 9 libraries in the province. We submitted fully costed research to the province in late 2024 regarding the national averages for salaries, collections, and technology costs across the country. So we have those updated national averages from 2022 and 2023. Then the current funding formula expired on March 31st of this year, and there was no new funding for libraries included in the 25-26 provincial budget. Saying that, the file is still open and the libraries continue to work with the province on it and give them updated information about the financial situation at all of our libraries. So while that process is taking place, the libraries have made 2 emergency requests for funding this year. The first was for 800,000, which really just ensured that we had the same amount of funding this year as last year, and that amount has been approved. The second amount was for 1.6 million, and that has not received a decision to date. This amount primarily addresses the increase to budgets that are as a result of the minimum wage increase across the province. So really not a substantial increase. And it will be helpful for this year, but it's going to be critical that we continue to work towards something that's sustainable and long-term. So your council has previously heard that AVRL has already made difficult decisions with respect to service, reducing staff and services, despite the increases in use that we're seeing over time. The biggest takeaway from AVRL is that we have, in the last 10 years, eliminated 12 full-time permanent positions at the library to be able to cope with inflation and other cost increases. And because of that reduction in staffing in 2024, we have had to reduce our program offerings by 50%. So we're no longer able to participate in partnerships with other community organizations or the provincial government, despite being asked regularly to do so. So we are at the end at AVRL of what we can do without catastrophically affecting library service. In terms of budget and forecasting, AVRL has been in a deficit budget for the last 2 years. This will be the third year of forecasting a deficit. AVRL does have the reserve funds to be able to operate at the current level of service for 25-26. That is not true for 26-27. Other library regions, I would note, are in an even more precarious position than ours, and if the 1.6 million does not come through for them, you are going to be seeing reductions in open hours and layoffs of staff in other regions as soon as this summer, actually. So all 9 regions are collectively communicating with the ministry, and I have been meeting with the regional MLAs individually to make sure that everyone is aware of the local situation. And the library board would like to thank your council, along with all the other councils in the region, for sending the joint letter that you did in March, which has inspired other municipalities in other regions to follow suit. So to sum up, we are urging the provincial government to address library funding as soon as possible to prevent more loss of service and be able to provide the level of service that Nova Scotians deserve and are asking for. So with that, I will say thank you and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, any questions of Julia? I have a couple, or at least a couple comments. One, do you have any age demographics? Who's doing all the reading now? Because there's some age group that you can look at and say, this age group is reading more than before? Is it younger people, older people, young people like myself?
Libraries are very bad. Libraries are very reluctant often to mine their own data for these kinds of things. So we have not done a local deep dive at AVRL on that, but library research trends show that it's the biggest categories of users are young children and families, then it drops off in teenagers through mid-20s, families come back. Working age women are a very large demographic, and then people of both sexes over the age of 65. So there's some gaps in who is coming to the library, but that depends on the kind of programming and your collections and how well things are marketed. There are lots of people who don't necessarily know what it is that we do. So there's lots of room for us to bring in even more people to the library. So that would be just some general trends to think about, but it's important to note actually that when young people are surveyed about how they like to read, they like to read in print. So they very much enjoy engaging with the written word on a page as opposed to a screen. And there's some very interesting literature around how the brain processes words on a physical piece of paper versus a screen. So but that's getting off into my library and
Well, leads to another question I had around so I read electronically. maybe it's something off my brain, but that's another topic. So are you same page, Berwick Library and Halifax Library, but from time to time I lose Halifax Library, they don't. Is there something happening with the Halifax Library connection that wants me to put in my card again to? Or is it just maybe a fault with my?
I'm not sure, they're not part of the same page system, so
No.
I'm not sure exactly what issue we might be having there.
Okay. All right, Deputy Moore.
I guess at a certain age, kids age out as well. I mean, my kids participate, but in 12, the reading program is no longer. They're cut off there, and the same with, you guys still rent out the bikes and that? I know the electric bike, but that's an age limit of 19 and above.
Yeah, unfortunately, the bike program ran out of funding for maintenance, so if there's a bike still in service, it's on maybe not to be for as long as we would want it. So but broadly, no, that program has ended, and we do have an all ages summer reading challenge. We do have prizes for teens and adults, so
Okay.
they are welcome to sign up for this summer. We think we will also have a trivia night for them, a trivia night program for teens. Check the website and have a look.
Council.
Hey, Julie. So traditionally, I'm assuming like funding also follows like the number of folks that are using the library and we track those for that reason. I'm saying like, this is the need that the community is voicing because we have this many folks under the membership. Is there anything we can do to try and increase membership? Is that data still going in that process? Like more people mean this should be another reason to go for more funding?
Yeah, the funding is actually a hybrid model based on set amounts for particular parts of operations like collections technology and a certain amount of per capita staffing. And then there's an additional amount per capita. So it's not actually tied to usage, which is it's good for us and it keeps things more stable and longer term. So I think the most helpful thing that this council will be able to do is to continue to promote the library and in the event that there are service reductions, to help us communicate that to the public and communicate pathways for the public to make their opinions known on that item. Because sometimes there's a disconnect between how far a library is able to reach, and so we may be able to contact the people who we see every week, but maybe not the people that we see every 6 months. So town's assistance in communicating the challenge would be the biggest help that you could give us.
Cool. Anything else? So Julia, rest assured, we do, whenever we can, promote the library, and as much, we've written the joint or signed the joint letters. But we do lobby our MLA. I do whenever we meet with them, and I think the last time we officially met with him, it was on our list and it'll continue to be. At what point do you stop that or decide to go make this a public issue and get the public on your side? You just mentioned if you needed one of the areas where you need our help is to go public. So when do you change your tactics with the government?
Well, I think based on the financial forecast and the need to be open and communicate with the public in advance of 2026, we're probably looking at fall of this year to begin communicating, if we haven't heard what the funding situation is looking like.
Okay, great. Well, keep us involved in what your strategy may be and how we can help with that. Okay.
I do have just a clip to get clarity on something. So the 1.6 million is really just a 1 year, but to bring things back to previous service levels, but the increase in wage.
Correct.
So that's still just a 1 year Band-Aid and doesn't
Correct.
address long term.
Yes, divided between the 9 regions.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't, do you have they've provided no timeline on when a decision would be made, have they?
That's right. Yes, we did submit it at the, well, just prior to the beginning of fiscal year, so I mean, it's March, April, May, Three months? No timeline.
Thank you.
All right, there's nothing else. Thank you very much and
Thank you.
keep up the good work at the library. It's-
Yeah.
yeah.
A lovely evening.
You too. Thanks.
Oh, they turned you away.
Well, I was gonna say, now we give her a speech, you're welcome to stay, but we understand if you leave, so.
Waiting a really long time for this weather, so I'm gonna.
I could. Oh, that was a beautiful night the last time I said.
Okay, so our first item will be the pre-A, I guess, or the one part that we've added to it, and Deputy Mayor asked earlier, and we are gonna talk about the idea of adding the announcement pieces to the agenda, but here we are to start it off tonight. He has an exciting announcement to bring our attention.
I guess too, because it's time of the year, but I'm gonna start off, both the West Kings girls and boys participated in provincials last weekend. The boys were successful in winning, gold in rugby by 1 point. They, won both days by 1 point, they the same team. Good hard fight. The girls, they won the bronze as well for West Kings, so we're very happy on that front. Glaze Bay came down and there were some other local teams, but for the boys, it was just Glaze Bay that they played 2 games, but they won both by 1 point. Only sent a couple to the hospital. The other thing, I guess, that time of year for graduation, we won't meet, I think, before then, so just for West Kings and Central Kings are our school, they use our rink. Just want to wish all the graduating students all the best now and in the future. And our own Berg Stingers.
Thank you. And that just reminded me that, so as part of this kind of recognition, we do that at our Hall of Fame every year, and the Hall of Fame event is Saturday night, and this is our recognition piece is any team that came the top 4 in the provincials, or anybody made a provincial team, or anybody that went to the nationals, or any significant other kind of sport accomplishment. It's got to be fairly significant. And this is I think one of our longest lists of those people that we've seen in the last number of years. So our local athletes and local teams have done very well. And I think if you become Saturday night, you'll hear that kind of list of accomplishments. So
How do
Well
you
done, Jim.
submit make sure that someone's on that list?
we ask the public to, or we go, we sniff around. We just do our best and we contact the schools.
Provincial champ sitting at this table.
Well, so I hope Taylor would know that and has it on the list. Has she?
Taylor
Yeah. For what? Yeah.
Soccer.
Well, there you go.
Senior women's set aside.
Awesome, okay.
That's congratulations. About my rugby back in 92, but that's all right.
So our list of accomplishments is just like in the last season, so it's not an ongoing list, it's just what happened in the last year. And then next year we'll have a new list, a lot of the same people in some cases, because we have regular athletes like Ben Brown. I've been getting a list of his accomplishments every year for the last 10 or more, but yeah, so it's really good to see. Okay, let's move on to A. So we're at the point that we're gonna entertain the first reading the second time. How's that? Crystal's not able to join us tonight, but she has submitted a report and Jennifer has tuned up on it a little bit to be able to. Oh, she's gonna take a clicker and go with it, okay?
Yeah.
So
Or is this just like the highlight from the left, so you don't have to go through the 100 pages of the actual
That's
report?
Well,
That is correct. So Crystal will do a probably more in-depth, it won't be all of the pages, but she'll do a more in-depth presentation for the public hearing. But tonight I have taken a presentation that Crystal had prepared and made it my own, just summarizing the report that you have from Crystal that highlights what the background, the main changes from the draft in 24 to this draft, and the relationship with the statement of provincial interest, and then some of the other key things that didn't change. So gonna keep it high level. I do have copies. I know they're in the package, but also in front of me where I can do a quick search, and if it's not a question that I can answer, we can get you the answer, from Crystal after the meeting. So as the mayor mentioned, as you saw in the report, this process actually began in 2023. And we had first reading of a new municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw back in May of 2024. Ooh, it would have been a long time ago. And we held a public hearing on July 29th. When council considered the second reading of the documents, there was some concern raised regarding the removal of the R1 zone. So it was directed back to staff to maintain the other recommendations from the report, but to do some greater consultation around what an R1 or other name for R1 zone could be for the documents. So some of the things that have changed from the document that was presented at first reading in 2024 and what is presented now is that creation of the new residential restricted zone RR. So it only permits single unit dwellings plus one accessory dwelling. For anyone who was trying to figure out STR, short-term rentals, so they are limited to the main dwelling, so your accessory dwelling cannot be a short-term rental. And there's no upzoning by site plan or development agreement in the RR zone. And then the two locations that were identified for the RR zone were on Veterans, Byzantin, McIntosh, and then the Orchard, Gravenstein, Thomas area. There's probably some other streets, but those are the highlights. There's also a rezoning ladder, which provides clarifies the intensity and provides clear criteria for what is in each of those new zones. And this is really just clarifying what was decided by council at the first reading in 2024. So in the for parking in the core, we made it from 1 to 0.5 stalls per unit for residential and 50% reduction for other C1 uses for the parking requirements in your downtown zone. And then for any new development, and then working, so this wording would reflect, yes, the feedback. Building height, so one of the recommendations that council supported was a 5-story would be allowed as of right and with urban design criteria. And this is just a mock-up of an example of what 5 stories could look like in the downtown core. Agricultural infill on Willow Avenue, so it allows lots at 30-meter frontage or 100 feet frontage lots for subdivision, and farm use frontage would remain at the 60 meters, and this really limits the number of subdivisions that could be done on this property, but still maintain some agricultural use in the area. Another addition was groundwater protection, so adding a mandatory hydrogeological study for rezoning to the residential mixed density or residential growth designations, or if there's more than 6 units on a lot. And there was also an addition to include its policy 3.28, and it is it shall be the intention of council through the creation of an asset management plan to periodically reassess growth within the town. So that we're considering what assets and infrastructure needs to be replaced based on or added based on increased growth in the town. Site plan criteria, so the compatibility criteria was tightened for when there was a multiplex proposal abutting a residential restricted zone. So there was less of a, I think she called it a hard edge between the two property zones, softening that a bit. So those were the changes. Some of the things just to bring back to one of the goals for the update to the municipal planning strategy was to ensure consistency with the statements of provincial interest. So these are the statements of provincial interest, and these are the policies that address or meet them. And we have reviewed these documents against the statements of provincial interest, and also had some discussions with planning staff at the province in the early terms to make sure that we were meeting those definitions. And so again, these are just the policies, and I do have reference to them in front of me if you have any specific questions on them as we near the end of the presentation. Other key changes that are still in effect, so things that have not changed. So the transportation map and street hierarchy, and that's a picture of the transportation map and street hierarchy. So identifying what is a collector road, what is an arterial road, local road, private road, where there might be future connections. There's also reduction in development agreements, so there's more as of right or site plan approvals and less, sorry. I just opened the wrong thing here, and less, why did that go all the way back? I have no idea. Okay, and less need for a development agreement, and is going through that process. There's also some expanded development officer variance powers, and non-substantive DA amendments. So there's a policy that outlines what those variances would be allowed to be made by a development officer. There's some additional policies around energy and climate language for renewable energy, particularly around allowing our solar garden in the zone that it's in. Downtown ground floor commercial requirements. So if there is a commercial or new building in our commercial core, that at least the bottom floor would be required to be commercial and the rest could be residential. And then future residential designation and residential comprehensive development district framework for comprehensively planned greenfield areas. So those things have not changed from the draft that was in 2024. Why was that? Skipping over my, so here's the process. So in April 1st, 2025, PAC was presented the preliminary plan. We held a public engagement session on April 23 to really talk about that restricted residential zone and identifying where that may be. PAC reviewed that residential restricted recommendation and considered some other options from that public engagement session and recommended to council to continue with 2 zones. So I guess what's missing here is we did have a council meeting between that meeting and first reading where council took the recommendation on the RR zone and considered whether they would accept the recommendation of PAC or provide a different one. And the direction was to continue and add to these documents for first reading the residential restricted in the 2 areas identified on the map.
Can we have that updated for a public hearing meeting just to make,
Yes,
show that that piece was in the,
absolutely. And then, so tonight we're at first reading, and then on tentatively July 7th, Crystal will be present to present a more in-depth presentation on the documents. And just because it won't be just on the new things because we're going back to public hearing. It is a public hearing for the entire document. So it should go through all changes from the 2012 document to the proposed document. And then it will go to, it would be sent off if approved, it would be sent to I don't believe that there is an appeal period because it gets sent to the minister for approval. Council sets policy, so they can't appeal against something that you haven't set. So the MPS and LUB amendments don't get an appeal period by the public.
The public would be aware though that we put Crystal back aboard just to do the area that we had already agreed to everything else that was done.
Yes,
Okay,
so I believe the presentation would be probably not quite like I structured it, because Crystal and I think a bit differently, and she'll probably get into a lot more of the reasons why things were decided in the way that they were decided, so what outside factors were considered in why we need to consider the missing middle, and why we the process we went through for the RR zoning, so she'll go through all of that.
I just want the public to know that basically it's two different committees that, you know, we agreed on probably 90% of it with the last term, and then new people brought in, and this is a piece we needed to fix up for our liking,
Mhm.
just so they know, just that's me, so the public's aware.
Yep, so we'll make sure that that process is clear. So they are able to comment on anything.
Right. So could we make some more changes to that? So the public hearing,
Oh,
whoops,
the process, you mean?
yes, please, back to that. So can we show the public hearing July 2nd
Mhm.
or 7th, sorry, and then another block below that that says second reading, July 2nd.
7.
7th, why do I keep saying that?
Mhm.
Are we gonna, well, that's the question. I thought, are we going into a special meeting that night? Or are we doing it the next night? And that's where it would be approved or not approved, not necessarily at the public hearing. We should
Right.
distinguish between
Sure.
the public hearing as a night and then the second reading as where we do approval and not approval. And then if there's no 14-day appeal, we don't need that.
Yeah, let's
one down.
remove it.
So what did we decide about our council meeting? You think it's the 8th?
So we hadn't, so there is a regular council meeting on July 8th. We're holding the public hearing on the 7th because it will likely be a lengthy meeting. And to go from that into a regular meeting of council and have other agenda items would probably be very lengthy. We've also talked about in the past having 24 hours between listening to the public and making a decision. I think the discussion that you and I had was, for the most part, but we do have 2 new counselors, is we've done a public hearing. There's not a whole lot of new information outside of the documentation that will make sure council has access to. So Crystal's supplementary report that she submitted after the last public hearing that highlighted some of the concerns and identified whether they are even a planning issue or would be addressed in another report or department. So that might be helpful. So I think the discussion that we need from council is, do you want to plan automatically that they're 2 separate meetings, or we can advertise a special council meeting and you can decide that night after the public hearing whether you're comfortable moving into it or deferring the decision to the next night. Those are the options.
As a returning counselor, I know the public always, from what I get feedback, enjoyed the 24 hours. They say, at least you've heard us, not come in predetermined that you're voting on it that night, that at least 24 hours, because people can change their mind or whatever. Or you can come in, I know they liked it, I know it's another night, we all have to come out,
Well,
but that's.
Because we're back anyway.
Okay, yes, yeah.
So that's a very good point, yeah. Counselor Sereno.
Myself personally, like after I have a huge briefing meeting and all that stuff, I'd like to just to let it marinate. Get some thoughts going and get my thought process going.
Okay. Other thoughts on that?
I like it so for second thought.
So then so our next block, second reading will be July 8th.
Yep.
Okay,
Perfect.
great, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Did anyone have any questions on the document? So we're
Just a clarification on the RR, that's basically the nuts and bolts of issues in the past is the RR, which was the R1.
Correct.
It's. What is the definition of the small options? And small options homes, can you clarify that for me, because that's within the RR.
Mhm. It's a, yeah, so it's a provincial, direction, so we don't necessarily get to exclude it from zones. It's a provincial direction that small options homes be allowed in residential areas. This was a discussion that came up at planning. I can provide, I'd have to find it, but there is some literature on it that, came from the province that we can provide. You're looking for the definition?
I'm looking for who has directed us to have that, because that is, as I see it. I see it as a good thing, and I know that within that one RR zone, there is a small options home.
Yes.
And I see no problems with it, and have past 11 years have seen it as being a contribution to the community. I just want to make sure that we're covered from a standpoint of clarification of the public.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So May 2nd, 2024, we received, actually, let me make sure that I have that date right. So it's actually June 2nd, 2022. We received a letter from the Department of Municipal Affairs and Housing of the time, updating us on the statement of provincial interest regarding housing and small options homes. And so, so they see small option homes function in the same manner as any single unit dwelling. Right, regulation that restricts access to classes of persons who, where the building use, land use, structure, and lot geometry are the same as any other dwelling within a zone are not appropriate. These small option homes would be considered inconsistent with the statement of provincial interest regarding housing. So they've provided that direction. I also have a bulletin. I know that it was shared with PAC, but we'll make sure that the rest of council will put it on SharePoint, so you have access to it as well.
Thank you very much.
May very well be a point that comes up at the public hearing, so it'd be nice to have that.
Probably will, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions of any of those 100 pages for Jennifer?
I just only have one other question, and that's related to the agricultural zoning and moving to 100-foot frontage with that. Will there be any restrictions or development that needs to be considered in the future? Because if you put a number of 100-foot sites along the road, you're restricting access to the lands in behind, should you ever want to do anything with it. So are we cutting off future development as a result of that, or will we have provisions for, probably not, maybe sewer, maybe not, but sewer, water, street access to the lands in behind when we do that development?
Absolutely. So I believe, I'll have to, find them in here, but I do believe that the intention would be to make sure that no land is landlocked. So there would always be footage for, any property. You won't be able to subdivide more than, I think, one parcel at a time. So you, without it going through like a DA, so you wouldn't be able to take a large piece on the agricultural land and subdivide it with a new road. I believe there's more of a process to that. I'll find the information for you. And I believe at this time it would have to be septic system. There's no intention to expand the sewer across the river to go and service the homes. So we would want to limit the number of houses on that area. And I believe single unit is only allowed as well.
Hmm.
So I'll find that information for you, but I know we had a conversation with, planning staff about the agricultural rezoning. In that it was turned down originally when there was something, proposal made to the province. And so we talked about what could be feasible, and those were some of the things that we discussed. Exactly what you're describing, and also ensuring that you can't just go over and put a large subdivision in.
Right, and that's my concern is it's not so much a large subdivision, but 50 years from now, we have limited boundaries in the town. And 50 years from now, if we built everything on the road, we may be looking to do something in behind, so we have to be mindful of that, and as long as that's covered, I'm fine with it.
I will though, just before, might not find it right now, but after this meeting, we'll make sure that I find those policies to distribute so that you're aware of what they actually say.
In the meantime, food security is important.
Councilor Goff.
Was that 100 feet frontage or 100 meters, sorry?
Feet,
It's
30
30
meters, 100.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So, Councilor Sereno.
Sorry, I'm just wondering, we're watching them for the floodplains as well, like we're making sure people aren't building right on the floodplain, you know?
Yeah. So there has been a change in. Just to find it, so policy 3.3 expands the buffers around unmapped flood prone water bodies. So. It shall be a policy of council to, through the land use bylaw, increase the distance of water course buffers around water bodies known to be at a high risk of flooding. That have not yet been subject to a geomorphic floodplain mapping as data becomes available. And then the intention would be to get that floodplain mapping to put as a layer over top when we have it.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So we haven't received any floodplain mapping yet from the provinces, revising those distances.
We've received some raw data, and it needs to be dug into to understand. I can't explain it to you right now. I've seen the data that, we saw based on the bridge going in and some of the data that they had versus the data that the province was doing. And I think it has to do with the timelines that they're using for, like 50-year or 20-year or 100-year flood events. And so they look different. So I just need to dig in and understand. I don't think one is wrong, one is right. It's just choosing what you're going to use for your mapping. And so when we met with the Department of Municipal Affairs last month, they did say to reach out to them to have the discussion. They want to make sure that they have the right flood mapping. So that's a follow-up that we need to.
And is that something we can have by July 7th in case the question comes up as to what is our floodplain?
I will find out. We'll add it as an action.
Okay. All right, if there's no further questions, there is a motion there that we would,
That's been there. Right, so we've done it better.
so the motion then is the
I
council.
tried to update it, but I couldn't remember what we.
Yeah,
Okay. So the motion would be the council give first reading to the draft MPS and LUB documents and proceed to a public hearing scheduled for Monday, July 7th, 6:30 PM. Location to be determined, and direct staff to notify residents of the public hearing and highlight the significant changes in the draft municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw documents. So moved. We have a second, Councilor Sereno. Any further discussion on this?
The only discussion, how are we letting people know?
So I did want to just let you know why it's different than what's up here. So council already made the motion number one. You gave that direction on that meeting that's missing on the flow chart to add those to the LUB. So that's already been done. And we are going to do a mail drop to all residents. So originally this said just to those being R, but everyone's
zoning potentially could change is being considered, right? So we want to make sure that everyone is treated the same. So it would be the mail drop, it would be alert, it would be kiosk, social media. News, no, because we're gonna do a mail drop, anything,
Sign.
sign, yes, sign.
I've always worked with Canada Post being the way it is, and things can change, that's the only reason that I wanted to know if that was our only way, which is usually a good way, but.
And counselors, please feel free to share the
Yeah.
poster if you have with your own Facebook or social media contacts. That's the word of mouth and sharing it is the best, you know. Counselors,
Is there any way we could get it on the radio announcements in the morning when everybody's driving to work or on the bus or something like
is-
that?
Yeah, that would PSAs and see what it is to pay for one, so,
Well, I know that
That
you do community events. and
yeah,
stuff, right?
no, absolutely, but there is some, and I'm not sure what the cost of it is, you can just send one and say, when you have time, can you mention it? But you can also pay and we can submit it as a community event and see if they mention it.
Oh, yeah.
So it all.
we also do some of these as news items,
Mhm.
some cases,
Yeah, news release.
as a news release. Also, I'm co-hosting the morning show with Darren Harvey on Thursday morning.
No way.
As part of the radiothon, and so I haven't asked Jennifer for this yet, but I've been looking for some things of which we might
This would
wanna
be
tell
fun.
people.
That would be.
So, you know, I make a list of those kinds of things,
Mhm.
and cause I'll have to be gathering along as we have stuff. But, yeah, we can try to do it then as
What can
well.
we talk about our new hydro plant that's coming?
Hydro plant.
Well, the hydro, I think it's coming. Are you repairing it?
Oh, yeah, the turbine. Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah.
I'm sorry. if
Yeah.
I used wrong words.
It's the mandatory.
Oh, and
Yeah,
there will be an
yeah.
ad in the paper as well.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
It's on the paper.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have any other discussion on this motion? Okay, let's call for the question. All those in favor say aye. And motion's carried. Okay, great. Thank you. Long time coming with this, so it's great to get it moving along and, hopefully July 8th, we put it to bed.
There are some things, a perfect solution, only trade off.
Well, yeah. There's been a lot of back and forth compromise in this, and that's what it's all about, listening to the public and but making the best decisions we have to make for the town.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's move on to the second reading on the deed transfer tax bylaw.
So the draft document is,
100 pages.
I know, before we get there.
1 second.
Didn't get her stopped?
Finish this and give it.
173 is the page that starts on. So we have done the advertising in the paper for the deed transfer tax bylaw. We also provided contact information for anyone who wanted to reach out and provide any comments. And we did not receive any comments or requests, though it was available to view online to view the document. So we're bringing back the attached draft for second reading and passing.
Any questions on that? Deputy Mayor?
Did we hear back from Kendall if they're putting in theirs at 1.5? I think we were waiting to see, maybe.
County of King.
County King, sorry, yes.
No, I don't have that information
Okay.
today.
Is there an appeal process or part of this?
Not with the bylaw.
No, okay. Okay, any other questions on this? We have a motion. We have a motion up there.
Recommendation.
The recommendation that you see is the motion. Council provides second reading passing to repeal and replace the town of Berwick's deed transfer tax bylaw, chapter 121, as presented. We have a move, Bert.
So moves.
Council Walsh, Deputy Mayor, seconder. Any further discussion on this one?
Just like to have at some point in the future, on record, what the municipality county fees.
Yes, I think I missed putting that in the action item, so I'll make sure it gets in there so I don't forget.
Can I add that we add a few other of our neighbors? And have a
Yes.
bit of a list, maybe from Windsor to Middleton or whatever you can access.
Sure, we did have that in.
Yeah, I thought it was.
It was in previous, but.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just that updated, I guess. That, maybe the county was the only one that we,
Yeah, that we weren't sure of,
Yeah.
because they haven't.
yeah.
I
if any of the
don't
other
believe they've
changes-
approved yet, they've just been considering.
And it was in their, within their budget, if I recall, but not with it. They
Going through
haven't
the
done the
process.
bylaw change.
Correct.
All right, any further discussion on this? All right, we'll call the question. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And any contribution? Okay, our motion is carried. Let's move,
Sorry, I did just want to clarify one thing, that it won't become effective until the notice appears in the paper. So we can't apply the rate or update it for any new deed, sales of property until it's been ran in the paper.
and when's it going in the paper?
It'll be next one,
Thursday. Okay,
next Thursday.
it is something we wouldn't want to delay too long.
That's right. Chris is very good at following
That's,
up.
that's usually, that's the earliest we could get it in.
Okay, great.
Because the deadline's supposed to.
Okay, let's move to C then, our order to remedy 109 Marsters.
Yes. So this is an updated request for decision from the one that was shared as a draft back in May. I've worked with our solicitor to draft a recommendation that speaks specifically to the derelict vehicles. And it doesn't provide any direction on possible solutions in the draft motion or recommendation or order. It just clarifies what we consider to be derelict vehicles, and that either removed from the property or not visible from the street or neighboring properties. So one of the questions that we were getting clarity on was whether the portable garage or the tents were allowed in that zone, and they are allowed, but they have not applied for a development permit to place them and to, I think we allow 3 accessory units on a property. So that would include a garage or an accessory dwelling unit or
A shed.
shed. So we've had our development officer reached out to the property owner, has not heard anything from them. That is a separate issue from the unsightly issue. So if the property owner chooses to use those portable sheds to put everything in, then it becomes a development enforcement issue to make sure that those structures comply with our land use bylaw in terms of setbacks, number permitted, that type of thing. But those are not things that we can just go onto the property and remove as unsightly. It's a enforcement issue. So hopefully that clarifies the difference. So we've put in a date instead of saying 45 days. So as July 17th, which is a Thursday, as being the date by 3 p.m. that they would have to comply with the order. And they have to remove from their property any motor vehicle which does not display a license plate with the current registration for that vehicle, and which does not display current motor vehicle inspection sticker if required for use of the motor vehicle on public streets, and for which motor vehicle can be seen from a public street or neighboring property, and remove from the property any motor vehicle and any personal watercraft which is disused by reason of mechanical condition, and which motor vehicle or personal watercraft can be seen from a public street or neighboring property.
Any questions? So, Counselor Wagner.
I'm trying to understand, so some of the vehicles that he has on his property are now no longer in sight because of the structure that he's put there. Which has, is that correct, or am I?
So one of the things that we will have to get some clarity on is what insight means. Because they they are behind the garage or the structure, but you can still see them at some point in your drive-by. So they aren't completely hidden,
Oh, okay.
in terms of covered, they are visible. The question is, what is reasonable visibility, for your neighbor to see? Cause typically we say we don't police someone's backyard. But this is a corner lot, which makes it a little bit more difficult to determine what a neighbor or public sees. So that has been something that I've been struggling with, how to enforce that.
Is it possible, though, that there are vehicles that you cannot see inside that structure?
Yes, very possible.
Which, I guess the fact that the structure is not permitted creates another problem. So I just want clarity, so I kind of understand
So
what
if
we're really facing.
right, so if a vehicle is inside of one of those, that would not be something that would be removed from the property
Mhm.
because it is not visible from the street. But if it's behind it and visible, then it
Then
would
it's-
be considered. The intention is to not have vehicles parked on the grass as permanent parking locations. And we would do that by trying to target the vehicles that meet the term of derelict. And because there could be so many cars that could be parked in the driveway, you would likely try to work with the most derelict and work your way up. So as long as it's not in here, but some of the things that as the administrator I'd be looking for is to make sure that if you can park 3 on the driveway that are registered or in good working order, then the rest would be ones that would be considered derelict.
Okay.
If they can't be stored in one of those tents.
Other questions? Jennifer, how do we enforce the penalty? Less than $100 or not more than 5, who chooses, and in default of payment to imprisonment for not more than 3 months?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
It was a question that I had for the solicitor, but there was a secondary question that I had after we get closer to that point.
Mhm.
Because it also says it's a new offense every day that it's.
Right.
Um,
So it'd be an additional $100 or whatever the daily penalty is for the
Right.
day.
and is there a maximum?
Doesn't say.
No.
Because like, oh, for not more than 3 months. Oh, no, that's
No,
the
that's
imprisonment.
imprisonment.
5,000, no more than $5,000.
Oh, okay.
So-
I thought that was there's a choice between $100 a day and not more than $5,000 a day.
So I interpret that, and that's why we would need the solicitor to weigh
Okay.
in, is that you can't charge more than the number of days that you can charge $100 a day until you get to $5,000, but no more than $5,000, but it could be one or the other. Because I was wondering, how do you determine the effectiveness of the penalty versus going in and removing them yourselves and the cost difference? Because if they are never going to remove them and you just keep putting a lien on a property that they don't intend to pay,
Right.
how do you find that balance? So those are some things that I still have to solicitor and don't have an answer for tonight.
That's what I thought would happen is that we would, when we clean it up, bill him or put a lien on the property.
That would be my recommendation and not to do that, is that if they don't need it, so that we would come in and under the MGA, we're permitted to do that once we've given
Take
it.
it away, we impound it. Get another impound and,
Yeah.
Okay, all right, great. Counselor Jameson, Deputy. Did you ever end up for?
Right, well, the only thing is, I was gonna say, so if he would decide, I don't know what the vehicles are worth, to say here's $5,000, then I was gonna say, then we can't remove them, if he pays the $5,000 fine, can he say, I've done, I'm.
No, because it's up to us to put the fine on him and we can choose the fine for removal of the vehicle.
I wouldn't do any of this, but if I did, it's like, I can't build a building for $5,000, maybe I'm better to pay the town 5 and say, now leave me alone. I've got paid my fine, But, okay, thank you.
Like, just Councilor Jameson and Councilor.
Just question on, we're talking about the vehicles within the yard. But some vehicles in his yard, as I view them, do not require safety inspection.
So
Is
there,
that the if required
yes,
statement that
So
you
if
put
there-
in there that said, okay, so
I
you've got
believe
that.
so. So if it's not required to have a safety inspection, then you couldn't use it as a default for a derelict vehicle.
Cause antiques are not required.
They are required to have a safety check though.
A safety check, but that's.
So then it's a form that you would bring to a DMV that said, yes, I had a mechanic look at this and for the time that it was built is safe.
But that could be 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, well, we're not gonna classify, we're not gonna classify that I have to go through it, so I'm ready to go.
So whatever deal have to abide by whatever requirement is for the.
And there's a definition in the background there, and that is from the Municipal Government Act about what you can use to determine whether it is a derelict vehicle.
This has been a long ongoing, and we've tried to meet with him and resolve it mutually, offered him some suggestions. He has been unresponsive in a lot of cases and uncooperative when we did meet. So it's kind of left us no choice but to proceed along these lines, and maybe he'll conform to what's required. Or maybe he'll continue to challenge it, and we may see him again if we want to entertain him, which I'm not sure we
So
will like to do the first time.
Actually, the solicitor said that we are not required to, because council's making the decision and not the administrator, you're not required to have an appeal, to hear an appeal.
Mhm.
You may still want to,
Yeah.
but it's not required by law to hear, because council's the one that made the decision, not someone else. Delegated
This has
authority.
been a long time for us second city councilors that we've tried to work.
So the
Been fair.
notice will not indicate that they have an
Yeah, not
appeal
appeal.
option, that they could come and request to still talk to council or plead their case, but it's not a requirement by you to want to entertain that, or require it.
So you're suggesting we should think about it before we entertain that?
Well, I'm suggesting I give you the history so you know what may happen if we do get an appeal request, then we can decide whether or not, you know, but based on what he tells us, whether or not we want to entertain any appeal from him or not. I think that's, yeah. But knowing the history is important because it was a very successful delay tactic on his part, the very first time. And we were very amenable to listen to him and try to work with him, and it just did not. Get any place. Okay, so that we do need motion. Oh, Councilor Serene.
Well, I was from just for the motion.
Boy, thank you, because I was about to read that, and I was looking, that's a long one, so, if we're comfortable, seconded by Councilor Goddard. Any further discussion on this one? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Okay, motion's carried. Well, let's move on to the, appointment of a development officer.
So, I guess good news for, well, I don't know if it's good news for Ning, in terms of what his career progression is, but he accepted a job with the County of Annapolis, so he's no longer with Brighter Communities. So Crystal has someone new. Lauren has a lot of experience as a development officer. She was formerly working with the town of Lunenburg, and is a member of the Municipal Development Officers Association of Nova Scotia since 2023. And so just under the MGA, we are required to appoint her for her to be able to approve development permits.
We have,
So she's new, recently new to this career, like, since 2023, she's been. Nova Scotia Development Association, so it's like she.
A member of the association, so she might have been doing work under a development officer for years before that, but she'd be relatively new to that association.
It makes no difference, I'm just curious, I'm like, I don't. Like,
She may have been in one of the province.
yeah, okay. That's, okay. I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Counselor. We have a seconder. Blackenham, all those in favor say aye. Motion's carried.
And side can we send as a thank you at least to Dave while he was here, just something like that, doesn't hurt, but
Nice
just send
idea.
a little to him.
Send them a sympathy card.
No, well, no, I'm just saying, that's something we can do.
Okay, could that be an action item for Jennifer or whoever she directs to do it?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, nice idea. Okay, let's move on to our bridge beautification expense approval. So that's Katie's turn.
Drove across that.
I
bridge
drove
on the way
over the
home.
bridge today.
Yeah, I did too.
Coming home from golf, I
Yeah.
drove over the bridge. No way.
Was it good?
Oh, it's wonderful. Get rid of that monstrosity next to it though.
Yeah, I think we should keep it there and have an ode to Dukes of Hazzard within town.
I got an email just now from my wife saying that she was driving over, so.
Very exciting times.
So we were ahead on that one, were we not? Did we not say it was gonna be up to 2026? We thought before we finished?
No.
Okay,
Yeah, they're pretty much on schedule from when we talked to them in January as far as paving and opening.
Yep.
There are gonna be another few weeks before it's done, which is taking the old,
Yep.
the temporary one out and redoing the work that's done. But they're working on some of the other things now. They're starting to skin off the parking area. One of the other pieces of reinstating things is expanding the commuter parking piece, so they're skinning that off. And they're filling that pond that's over by the other building. And they've asked yesterday to have the gate piece moved because they're gonna start hauling fill out of there and dumping it in the pond. So they're starting on those pieces as well.
wonderful.
Yeah. Sorry, Katie.
Sure, no, that's great, thanks. So as part of the approval of the capital budget of this year, hopefully everyone remembers that we did approve, the beautification project, which at that time was a expected or anticipated expense of $25,000 with 12.5% of that coming directly from the town, the other 12,500 coming from what was called the beautification and streetscaping program. We found out just last month, I believe, as discussed around this table, that, and I don't know how long that grant has been in place, but it's been since I've been here, well, since at least 10 years ago, the beautification and streetscaping program has been an annual grant. So we had anticipated that it would continue and had no indication up to this point that they would not be renewing that program. So I would say that we confidently suggested that that would be a grant that we could apply for this project. And that is why we stated this as that in the capital budget. Unfortunately, that was not the case. But we did kind of receive news that we can't anticipate that coming back anytime soon. So unfortunately, that meant that we thought we had a budget of 25,000, but that quickly was reduced to 12,500, which was the town's portion of that. We did receive quotes and information back about the cost of the beautification elements. So you will see, if you do take a look now driving over, there are structures in place now for the posts and the lighting. So upon receiving the quote and the information and realizing it was over budget, we have reached back out to the supplier to ask if there's any things that can be tweaked or removed from the existing structure to take it down in cost, so we can be closer to the 12,500. But wanted to just bring this in front of council, and we have anticipated the highest expense that this project would be 18,141.98, as you can see, which would be an increase of 5,600
$42, so seeking approval from council to move ahead with that additional expense there.
Questions of Katie? Okay, what about the apples? Will you come back to us when we have the cost of the apples finalized and do this again?
Yes, so there are also smaller elements, like when we first looked at the 25,000, there were some around banners, some other components of the beautification that we would like to tie into it. So yes, that would be part of an additional ask, once we finalize this stage of the process.
So in the last conversation with Aaron, he's looking at fiberglass apples for there.
Yes,
So
we're looking at the,
Katie has another cool idea. It
yes.
might be premature to mention.
No, I've actually been looking quite a lot and it's nice to see now, but I have seen and have been looking into mural art on bridges. So I actually have some photos saved of folks doing murals. So we could have a mural painted on the post that could reflect something based around Berwick. We thought might be a nice project to work alongside with the Mural Society too as well. So I know we've been working hard in the apples and not saying that that won't happen, but another additional piece that could make it more personal to our community, and build more community pride would be something.
I did find in my travels a couple weeks ago, I couldn't find just a basic apple, but I did find a little boy holding a basket of apples. And Jennifer was not a fan, to say the least. I'm trying to find my picture of that. So now I have two people who are not fans of the little boy holding the apples. Maybe it's probably not worth me finding the photo.
There was a link.
Oh, is it a link? Maybe I won't find the photo. Yeah. Anyway, it was an 18-inch statue that would fit like down the same way the apple would. So anyway, it sounds like we have more work to do around the apple and or the ornamental piece to the bridge.
And they're
Just, yeah.
right over there, but they were looking at having a 3D printer, being able to
Yeah.
create and mold.
Yeah,
So
I
that-
suggested that
yeah.
a while ago. So if you could find someone who has a 3D printer.
Well, I mentioned to Katie to check with the library, so
Mhm.
use.
The library has a bakery that rotates to the library branches, and it just left here, but they do have a 3D printer.
Excellent.
We don't know
So
if we
that
can
could
do
be
something that big, but Katie's on it.
Good, good. Okay. Deputy Mayor.
I hate to be the one to say it, but we've had other projects where it's if we get the funding. We did not get the funding for this. We had our half ready sitting there. This is not, and what happens or has happened in the past with other projects, then it comes out of reserve. The one thing this council said we want to do is not take any more out of reserve, so can we not just put this to next year? Unfortunately, as we do with other projects, if we don't get the funding, we apply next year again. Maybe we'll come back. I hope it comes back. It was a wonderful thing while I was, I know.
Sorry, and I don't mean to,
No,
but there's no grant that I'm aware of that this project would fit within, so it would need to be. And there's been no indication that it'll come back. We didn't have the discussion, when we met last month. So,
So we may have to pay for it regardless. Next year it may cost us more. I guess that's
Mhm.
something to consider. But we could do that if we choose to defeat the motion
Mhm.
or look at a different motion. Absolutely.
And I just might make the suggestion, the other elements like the apple and the banners. And if there was other things, maybe we look for a grant to come back for those things. So you've approved there's already infrastructure in place to support the lights and get those in, and then the next phase is it doesn't continue unless there's funding to support it.
And look what you found. Will you share that with us?
is it a photo?
I can't believe you found that.
Oh, Mike.
Okay.
Oh, no. No.
Now she do it to me. No. I stopped in, there was a garden center in PEI and I stopped in and asked them, do you guys have cement apples? Because they had all kinds of bowls. I've never seen one as big. And she told me, no, but I have a little boy, yeah. I said, can you send, she booted up on her computer and sent it to me. Okay, so any other questions regarding the lighting? And this, and then we'll entertain a motion and we can have some more discussion on it, so.
I guess my only comment, this is the entry to the town. It's just
Yeah.
fundamentally what you see. And your first impression of the town is like your front yard. Only at a higher speed. So what we can do, although I totally agree with the deputy mayor on, you know, we should not be using our operating reserves or to pick up on things that we've lost grants on. I also think that we have to be mindful that this is the first site view of the town of Berwick and find resources, if not from the reserve, somewhere in order to support it.
I tend to agree, and I tend, there's other elements around there that we're doing with the interpretive area and that. That it would not, it would be nice to finish them and do it when it's done and not have a project in progress for God knows how long as we pick away at other little pieces, like, you know, leaving things half finished in the entryway. Doesn't, you know, I think would impact our reputation. So I think that I would tend to agree with that too, so. Anyway. Okay, are we ready to make a motion and then we can have some conversation on the motion and
I
decide?
make the motion.
Okay, so the motion is for $5,641.98 from operating reserve. Capital budget to cover the costs associated with the installation of the beautification elements, which is actually at this point. The structure, the light fixture structure,
Lights and posts.
so, yeah. Yeah.
Not the boy with the.
Because no, okay, I got that. Yeah. Oh. They were gonna paint it up for us too. We have a seconder.
I will second that.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Clack. And are we ready for any further discussion on this? And we had no further discussion. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any contrary minded? One contrary minded, our motion's carried. Okay, and those will be ordered
Sorry.
tomorrow morning?
You got me as country man.
All right.
It can actually be ordered
Thank you.
now.
And you got that registered? Any idea when they arrive, Katie?
10 weeks.
10 weeks.
Worst case scenario. was
Yeah.
Yeah.
For 12 weeks then.
10 weeks.
So we did have a suggestion about a grand opening for there, and I spoke to them when we met last Thursday down there about an opening. And they're going. Department of Transportation would look at stuff with their communications people, and we could definitely plan an opening. Now, I suggested,
Or you just, you made like a little funny tone when you said that, so
well,
I
it's
was
gotta
waiting.
be one.
So I was
So in
waiting.
1998, when they opened the Confederation Bridge, they shut that down and let thousands of people run the 14 kilometers across that. And I was one of them. And I thought, you know, now I'm in the perfect shape to run across the New Berwick Bridge. I thought, we could do the same thing. Anyway,
Just mentioned that at the last.
yeah.
Yeah.
However, they don't like the idea of shutting it down. So, it just caused too
No,
much
we're
delay.
stopping.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So we kind of talked about having an event, you know, off to the side there, more of some entertainment or barbecue or whatever, and do a ribbon cutting just off to the side of the bridge. And they thought that would work out really well.
Measure the distance for you, we can still run it.
Dude, so.
Be sure it's uphill.
Yeah, I can walk across the side.
That could be your entrance, just come from the other side and run down and then, yeah,
Yeah.
cut the ribbon as you go.
Anyway, we could, and so I talked about, we would plan to do that when it's done and choose a date. So likely sometime in July, if we wanted to have a little event, we can pick an evening or a Saturday or whatever and just call it their, you know, official opening of the bridge and invite people and decide what to do around a little ceremony there, so.
Does the bridge have a name?
No.
As a number.
Yeah. Berwick Bridge. but anyway, that may be something we can look
Yeah.
at,
Name the bridge.
yeah,
Apple Bridge.
yeah. Yeah,
Do a contest for him, do you know?
We can find out
Jeez.
since it's the province's
Oh, they might.
bridge, we can find out if that's possible.
yeah,
And we should maybe get Chris involved in being there as well, or someone,
oh, yeah.
or someone from the
I
province.
think that would be part of it as well.
Yeah.
That's where the Department of Transportation kind of said he would take it to his people, but what their role would be and how would they
Yeah.
be part of that opening, so.
If there's a ribbon cutting, I'm sure we won't have a problem at getting those spaces here. you know.
Just have them look up and say, wouldn't it be great if there was a sign that said Town of Berlin? That used to be there, would come back?
Yeah, the one over on.
Yeah.
I had that on my list with you. Okay, so we have that motion and so some more work between perhaps around the opening and we could suggest it at the community development meeting next week and
Yeah.
that kick it around there.
I'm sure there's gonna be about 200 votes for Bridgie McBridgeface.
Oh, that's such
Yeah.
a great name, just come up with that on the spot.
I did.
Yeah. Is that a character that we should know about?
It just seems to happen with any
It
time
was-
you put up a name. in
It
a
actually
contest.
happened at
happened with
Heritage
Chunk.
Station, or Heritage Station Park. It was like Trainee McTrain Face,
Yeah.
like there was a couple.
Yeah, the latest name for the newest Coast Guard vessel we had, they put it in a public one and the one that won with Bodie McCoface.
There's a pattern here. It's a
People
merge.
thought my apple was blown. Oh, cow, yeah. All right, let's move on. Now, we have F, our charity event participation policy. So,
Yeah.
Jennifer, you're gonna take us through that. That's come together quickly.
Has, thank you to Krista, provided a great, foundation that then management took a look at, and so I think we tried to cover all bases here, but it still is in draft, so happy for any feedback that council has, any tweaks that could be made. So we've defined charitable event. I think local region, so we've said the geographical region surrounding the town of Berwick, including town limits and adjacent communities within Kings County. Communities within Annapolis Valley may be considered if the charitable event supports residents of the town of Berwick. We clarify what registration fee would include, and what it would not include, as well as expenses that are incurred when you're at the event. What would and would not be, particularly around alcohol as well. And also that later on, you'll see, it's also not an eligible expense to claim a meal or expense claim on either. And I know that sounds
It's
kind of common sense, but it doesn't hurt to be very clear upfront.
Common sense income.
Well, you,
Um,
you say that, we get $200 a year, could you say, well, I wanna use this as my fitness thing?
So absolutely, and I did share that with staff when we talked about the intention, so that's not yes, you put it on an expense claim, but it's a different policy. It's
Okay.
not covered under the expense and hospitality policy. So there's two qualifiers for an event to be eligible: charitable purpose, and it has to be local community focused. And they have to meet both criteria. If they don't meet both criteria, they may not be eligible for support. So what we're suggesting is that council, we put may approve, because you may decide not to approve a budget 1 year for this, but council may approve a budget to cover the town's portion of registration fees in the annual operating budget. And then, and this could change, but I just put down that myself or a designate shall approve the charitable event prior to registration. So someone would have to bring it to me to consider before we would move ahead with either reaching out or for registration, and that it must meet the eligibility requirement and be within the approved budget. So registration fee is 50% of the registration fee, and the remainder would be the responsibility of the participants. And that the town will not register or commit to the event until the specified number of participants has confirmed participation. And the participants' registration fee shall be paid to the town of Berwick prior to the event to participate. And any expenses incurred during the event are the responsibility of the participant. Participation guidelines, so it is voluntary, no one is forced to participate in any of these. If it does happen during work hours, an employee would, with approval from their supervisor so that there's no impact to operations. So if it's a, day we're planning to do line painting and it's rained every other day, it might not be the best day to have someone away or a whole team away from work. So that was the only one I come up with, but I don't mean to pick on Public Works with that example. And employees will not be required to use vacation time if it's during working hours, but they also don't accumulate any overtime if the event goes past regular work hours because it's seen as a benefit to you. Participants are not eligible to claim mileage to the event or expenses such as meal allowances. But if there was an event, say in Kingston, and we had a town vehicle that wasn't impacting operations, there could possibly be carpooling from town. I saw that Deputy Mayor Wade's happening.
Yes, because when we drafted this is for golf tournaments only, that's what I saw, and now it's, I'm just saying for golf tournaments, how many do we allow a year? I know we put 2 teams in, I call it the Bobby Best tournaments, not, but for the KMC. And I thought we went in one at the Grandview Manor. I was just looking at the total cost, cause I would almost wanna put a total cost on it. Before the town covered everything, I think so that would take us to maybe 1,200, that's off the top of my head, I could be wrong, for an average tournament, it's $400. I'm just saying, we get to double that or other events as well, but I think we should put a cash value on this.
I think we're getting there after we do have to have established a town.
Yes.
budget.
Okay.
Right,
Yes,
so-
that was something that came up, how many charity events, and we did discuss having it broader than golf because not everyone golfs. So we did make the wording broad, but absolutely agree there needs to be a budget put in place. And this isn't intended to be thousands and thousands of dollars. It's intended to sort of cover those few that we get invited to.
One of the other examples is the softball tournament that we did as well, so that expanded it to the softball piece. And we pay for that softball tournament as well, so that might have been, that could go in on top.
For sure, that's what I was thinking of as an alternate, and I
And-
didn't sign up for that.
Charity event, it could be a dinner and auction, like we do get invited to multiple of those, not just the KMC.
That was my other question, is it going to cover those, and now are we paying for 50% where we used to just pay?
Well, that's a great discussion, I would say, for council to have. I think that's really the end of the policy, so I'll leave that to council to discuss.
Council Walsh.
So, just looking at that, the documents, what would that relate to, say, like chamber events? Like say, like I was just at the Valley's Best, awards night last week. I was there with my other hat on, but we're also members of the chamber, so for that, I know that like every other town had counselors that were there at the event. And I was just kind of like flying under the radar on that, cause I don't think, I don't know if we'd had any plans to go or attend. But what about like between that, like chamber events, or other like, community events that might be like community conversations, but also in part, like a personal development opportunity, that would reach out. Does that relate to this policy, or is that still something separate?
I would say that's under your council expenses, so
Okay.
if you, instead of training or going to a conference or that type of thing, that would fall under the expenses for a counselor. And it's not intended to be for things that we're members of necessarily, I think. But again, if we need to clarify that a little bit more, and you mentioned about personal development, so like networking, or do you mean like?
I'm not sure, like I did think like networking, or say if there was like an opportunity in Chamber of Commerce is the first thing coming to mind for me right now, or say, like say I'm on the library board and say there is like a library development opportunity that would come from there. And if that were something to come back to the town as like an expense to attend. an
So
event
I
for
would
that.
say that would fall under 100% coverage
based on an expense policy and approval by council on professional development.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then I think maybe just as, if there
To clarify.
was something in there to sort of clarify that this is still separate from Reagan, and not that, like, I mean, I would say in 9 years, I think I really did maybe one opportunity that was at a cost that was outside of the regular going to the fall MSFM conference. But it's not that it's a regular thing, but just making sure that that was defined so that it was different from this sort of community event, yeah.
So I don't know if, so it's a charitable event described as an event organized to raise funds, awareness, or support for recognized nonprofit or charitable causes that benefit the public or a specific community group. So to me, attending a conference or an opportunity with the library board does not meet that definition.
What if it was something for like if it was something based on like low income housing or something else that sort of fits, like, you know,
Are they
council
raising
discussions.
funds for the charity?
And I guess.
Yeah, so
it depends.
If it's
on-
professional
Yeah.
development, doesn't fall under this. That to me is a request that you should bring to the mayor as a counselor to
Yeah.
attend. What am I?
No, I think you're right on, but you did, so there, we have in the past attended the chamber.
Yeah.
Not necessarily because it was a fundraising event, because we were a member and we supported their, and there was another one that we did as well, we went to regular, and I can't remember what it was, similar to the chamber. Eat dinner or event or some sort of, there's
Chamber one.
like awards night, it was,
Yeah.
yeah, so there might have been
Two different
chamber,
things,
two
yeah.
different things, awards nights, and so an awards night would be. So we don't have a policy for that, we didn't go there this year, I don't know
Yeah.
why, I don't think I even saw the invitation letter, but.
If we hadn't been nominated, I think I would have forgot about it too.
Well,
So, yeah.
I
Yeah.
heard about it afterwards,
Yeah.
oh, why we didn't go to that, or why I didn't see anything on it, we just kind of got
Yeah.
biased, but. Maybe we should be looking at that, but not as part of this, as to whether or not we participate in some of those annual events.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're members of.
Yeah, I think it's, we get like one email goes out to the municipality and we need to just discuss like making sure it gets to everyone, whereas some organizations are like, no, we send it to everyone.
Yeah.
And so whose responsibility is it to get the word out? But I don't think there was any intention not to make it available, just was something that slipped through, but I definitely think that if that's something we should discuss how we wanna handle those going forward.
And so KMCC type fundraisers, so that would be separate, like those would also be a fundraiser, but.
Well, that's,
We
there,
need to discuss
so
that.
we have a budget for that, of which
Yeah.
we do the dinner and auction, and we
Yeah.
do the golf tournament, 2 teams.
Two
So,
tables.
and 2 tables.
Yeah.
Right, and we would have Granby Manor, that we did last year, we were gonna do this year, so we had obviously identified some money, and then the softball event, but was there a fee to that, do you remember? Yeah, so there's a fee, so if that makes up our annual budget, then we pull that, that's our money. And then we sort of whether or not we do send 2 teams
Mhm.
to the Appledome Golf Tournament, or we do 2 tables. Sometimes it's a stretch to get 2 tables there. The other thing that the policy hasn't addressed is what happens if we don't have town staff or counselors available to make up the team or the table. Do we go to committee members next, and do we pay their 50% or spouses? Do we go to spouses after that? And do we pay their 50%, or do they come based on them paying the 100%? So, you know, cause it's a shame if we pay for a table and we can't put 10 people there.
And that's when the tickets are paid for. I'm
And
just
that's
saying,
100%,
that's what 100% is paid for, you put it out there, so now you're paying, people are thinking a little more about it, just
Well,
putting it out there.
yeah, absolutely. So that makes people, they're now committing more than, yeah, I'll come, and then don't show up. Or decide the last minute they're sick and can't come. And we've had that happen. The Appledome, you know, people are less sick when they get their own bucks involved, which is human nature. But So those pieces aren't part of this that we need to get our heads around. What to,
Or is it the other, you guarantee the ones we used to guarantee, and then anything above that, with maybe it's a $600 budget, it's 50/50, I don't know.
Hmm.
Cause we had for years, the golf tournament, the 2 tables, that's something we've committed for year after year.
We do, I think that the KMCC donations do need to be determined how we're gonna handle those, because we haven't signed the agreement yet, but in that agreement, we specifically identified that we would purchase those annually as our fundraising contribution to KMCC, so getting council direction on those would be good. You know, if it's that council would buy one for sure, and then if we can fill 2 tables with people paying 50%, great. I don't know, just putting some thoughts out there. I think this works well for golf tournaments. Maybe it doesn't work so well for anything. Need some more thought on what the next iteration might look like.
so you did mention this to staff, and how did staff have a response to having to pay?
I think
Didn't
there,
mind, weren't gonna do it,
I think initial thoughts were like, eh. But I also think that when you said that they wouldn't have to give up vacation time, there was a thought, okay, well, that's reasonable. And then the other thought was, it is eligible for your wellness credit as well. So there's a bunch of different things. I think it would depend on the event. I was just saying to Krista, like, there also needs to be some consideration around, you know, some tournaments, if we're talking golf, might be more exciting to staff than others. And so what happens if you get, are we saying that you can only put 1 team per event? That's not in here, but I didn't think of that. Like, is it if you get 8 people that want to do the tournament, are you approving 2 teams, or are we limiting to, we can only put 1 in per event?
I would exclude that except for the KMC, which we've always put 2 teams in. One is played out of Burke, one's played out of Paragon, ever since I've been a counselor.
And I guess the question is, like, those we have had hard time getting people to play, so is it more of a donation as opposed to it being a golf tournament, right? I mean, we get a big turnout of people who want to do it until the day of, and then we're scrambling to get people to actually golf in it when you're trying to put 2 teams together. So
That was when it was free.
yeah, so is it, and I'm not saying that we don't provide money, I'm just saying that maybe it's not for
But-
that one specifically, it's,
No, and again, but like the mayor said, once you put your own money in the pot, it, you know, it takes something very seriously, and then it's usually like, I've paid my portion. If you could find someone, I've already paid this money, I'm not asking for it back, just find another body to put in there, they're going for free.
we have seldom in the last number of years filled that golf tournament or any of the tables with only staff or counselors. We've always had either a committee member or a spouse to fill in, usually last minute. But sometimes not even last minute, because we just didn't get enough, but the spot was there. So we filled the table, or we filled the golf spot, so.
This is the last grant thing I have, so I kind of went to the higher power, talked to my wife, and she let me know that we were decorating for prom that day.
Mhm.
So that I would
Well,
not be
that's-
golfing, she said, any other day, help yourself, congratulations, but I was on prom decorating.
You're referring to the Grandview Manor?
Yes, for the Grandview Manor
Next
one.
week, which is a good test case, or this Friday, that's right, this Friday, which is a good test case, because we put it out under this policy and we didn't get enough.
No, just me and Chris.
Yeah, so,
You would have 3 if I didn't have prom, I apologize, I was off, but I looked.
I was willing to pay to play on a course that I'm already a member of.
Well, I know, that's the thing, yeah.
well, I think also it really depends on the date, right? You know,
absolutely.
I think
Sure.
everyone has good intentions of wanting to participate, but a meeting comes up, another commitment comes up.
something at work comes, like things happen, and I think that's why it has been challenging sometimes to get teams,
So this isn't forever and a day as policy, right? We can always make changes to see how it goes. And we put it together fairly quickly in response to what are we gonna do with like Granby Manor and then, and we know we have the Apple Dome ones coming up, so. But we do, the Apple Dome one is written in the agreement that we do pay, and we, that's part of their expectation for funding for that. And one of them has signed it now, and I'm not sure what that means, because they can't track down the second one from their board to sign it. And I'm not sure we were quite ready to sign it based on how we left some things open to like, what do you think? So I can't seem to get, but we will be finalizing that soon. And we'll need to, if we're not committing to two, we're just gonna commit to providing the policy opportunity. That'll be different in their agreement, and then hopefully we do get two teams and we still keep, or we haven't committed to it, so it doesn't matter. The other option that we have too is usually some of those events would have a whole sponsor or some other way in which you can make a donation without actually sending bodies. Which we may, if we don't have the numbers to commit and we still want to make the donation to the charity, we can do it in another way. But
which
that's,
requires a budget, because we don't have any budget to make those
Because
decisions.
golf games usually cost more than the team, I see,
Yeah.
like, I know they're $500, like, no, don't barely put a team on there, but.
but that would be in lieu of the
Yep,
team,
yep.
so the money is already budgeted,
Yes,
but it would be
yes,
used,
but
well, in a lot of cases,
This
a little
year,
less,
so.
yeah.
Hopefully not.
Yeah. So we have a motion to accept this. We can accept it and work out the kinks as we go, as, because we've identified a number of them. Or we don't. And we work out the kinks and then bring it back with the kinks worked out. Whenever that may be, because I think one of the challenges with this is we'll be identifying issues with it along the way of which we'll need to respond to, and I think if we leave that with the CAO and or council to say, oh, here's a curveball we didn't anticipate, what do you think of this one? And then we deal with it.
Yeah.
Very good. That sounds-
Yeah. Okay, so, can we have a motion then? We can have further discussion after that. So the motion would be the council approve the charity events participation policy as presented. Councilor Sereno, Councilor Walsh seconded that. Any further discussion on this? We have understanding that we will go ahead with it then and expect changes, I guess, as we identify them in. Wish staff and best of luck in.
So we've missed our window for the golf tournament on Friday? Okay, I see Kristen on here, yes.
We haven't had any more than two people.
I was gonna say.
Could you call Grandview Manor tomorrow and say, do you have a spot for a team? Maybe, but do we have any more than two people?
I would go home and appeal to a higher power. No. I'm just-
Well-
my wife was-
Yeah, but still-
The old, I made, no, if I made four, I would go home and say.
Yeah, so I'm already participating in it. Cause I made a commitment.
Okay.
To another
Team?
team. Well, my wife and another couple. So
Yes.
4 of us are going in that, so that was a while ago. Okay, any further discussion?
Only question is, are you implying that maybe we do the review instead of in 2 years' time, in 1 year time,
Or at,
I'm going,
as.
Or at any time?
or any time?
And I think the big piece that needs to come back to us that will, is the budgeting piece around this, like how much money are we talking and do the math, which is and then think about whether or not how that shapes up to, and I think the other thing would be, what are the other events that might qualify, that might be interesting, now that we may have double the opportunity because we're only paying 50% of what we paid for before. So now instead of doing those, 3 or 4 teams in a softball and or golf tournament and a couple of tables, what else might we do that we want to put out there and see if we want to fill this table for this or whatever, because we also, if we have the money, we wanna try to make contributions where we can, if it's for charities. Okay, we ready for questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Contrary, no, motion's carried. Okay, so we move on to the counselor check-in, and then we do have an in-camera session, so we'll have our break before we go to in-camera. Okay, counselor check-in, so thank you very much for everybody getting the getting your responses to the survey in time. In fact, Krista was so good at it, she ended up with 9 out of 7.
Response.
I said, holy cow, she's good. So anyway, she did do a little review and found out that there was only 7 out of 7, so that made really good sense. So what we did is we first put them all together, all the responses together, and we sat down, Jennifer and I sat down and kind of looked at them all and said, oh, this is kind of what we're seeing here. We consolidated the conversation, and then we came up with a recommendation a bit to share based on what we found. And we thought we would kind of run through that now with everybody, and we'll talk about the recommendations and what we found, and just see how we want to proceed with each of them. Take them one at a time, shall we?
Yeah, cause I would just comment that sometimes maybe the intention that was being written wasn't quite understood in the way that the feedback's provided, so there might be some clarity that we're looking for on some items as well, so that's a good time to have a discussion.
And the other point is, so as well as counselors doing the survey, Jennifer met with staff, and they sat down and had conversation on that and had some suggestions as well. So those are combined. Want to take her away? Okay. All right, sounds good. Okay, well, so there we go. I'll do the first one then. So the first one is the connection between the chairs and the resource people. So that's one of the things we established, new to those people who've been previously at council, is that you work with your chairperson, and then you also had an admin person for each of your committees to create your agenda and just talk about how your meetings would go. So we had feedback was that we had a generally positive relationship, good communication with staff and chairs regarding creating their agenda and being prepared for the meeting. Staff had generally positive experience as well. Just some challenges with some on occasion in getting those agendas confirmed in a timely manner, not always hearing from each other and making the connection in a timely manner, which we want to. So the recommendation is that remind the committee chairs that the role is to fine tune that. We don't want staff assuming they're the only one making the agenda up. But they do need to connect with you as the chair to do that. And we want to try to get them done before that weekend of the meeting. So there's a time requirement there. You can't wait to Sunday to call them. You're not going to find them in the office, right? It needs to be done later in the week prior to your meeting. So that's kind of the recommendation. And continue to do the good work and working together and keeping that positive relationship going. Any thoughts from anybody on that?
It's good, but being on PAC, Crystal's the third piece of our triangle, and then with her staff keeps turning over, that's the fourth piece of the triangle, so you just get on to the new person, how they are, how you can reach out to them, and they're gone.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing with me, is I can put my agenda pieces in, I can ask everybody, but it's the Crystal part that puts the main stuff in, say, great.
We do though just reach out to Crystal, don't we? Or do you send it to the development officer?
I think
That's-
that's both included.
I was gonna say, and then they take a role, like I find at the meeting sometimes, she can't be here, they are, he was here for some
Yes,
big important meetings, and
Yep.
to me, he's in my new lead, not that, I know she runs the big show, but he's my eyes and ears on the ground at the meeting.
Mhm.
And yeah, those are some of the challenges.
Oh, yeah, that's it, and I understand that, yeah.
Any other thoughts on that one? Escape tag.
I just yawned, so I won't. So one of the next questions was around timeliness and accuracy of agendas and minutes. So again, council noted that agendas and minutes are generally reflective of meetings and distributed in a timely manner, though some noted delays with meetings. And then having report deadlines quickly after a meeting can be difficult to meet. So one of the things that staff discussed and have clarified around draft minutes is that the 3-day business days is in relation to getting them drafted by the admin person. Then 5 days to send them to someone to review. And then get them out to the committee members within those 8 days from the meeting, so a week after. I will be very straightforward with you that I am usually the bottleneck if there's minutes that are have been delayed, it's probably with any committee that I'm the employee responsible for. So I have been trying to prioritize that better so that we can meet those timelines. So again, sometimes we're not always on top of it, but we did discuss that they're important to still have there and to try to meet. But I did just want to recognize where the bottleneck was and have been making it a priority that when I do receive those draft minutes that I'm looking at them, and staff is better at also following up with me to make sure that I am aware that they're still outstanding as well. So one of the recommendations is one, to remind council that if they are a council or committee of whole minutes, we do not send an email that they've been uploaded to SharePoint. So to make sure that you do check SharePoint regularly, so we're not sending, or at least current practices, we're not sending an email if it's council or committee of the whole minutes. So it will get updated, and when a week after the meeting, when you go in, ideally they should be there, the draft minutes. Additionally, council should remember to check weekly the SharePoint correspondence, so there is an update. Do we send an email on that one?
I have been, I don't think I did the last one. I think I just dump it in there by the date. I
Okay.
try to do it like every Monday or
The
previous week. There hasn't been a whole lot lately.
Yeah,
So,
So there hasn't been anything
yeah.
for a few weeks, actually.
So
I've been
the-
checking, haven't seen anything, so
Yeah.
I thought if I missed it.
So the only minutes that get emailed are the ones that have committee members that are citizen reps. And just another reminder is to just check email at least every 24 hours. So we're not asking to be on your email 24/7. But if there's a 24-hour check-in, like same time every day, then we know that if we send an email that requires some attention, that if you checked it within a 24-hour period from when we send it, then hopefully we would have had some response within that 24 hours.
I'm gonna be the monkey to that wrench, because I'm a 7 AM checker usually, because I'm always up. Even on my days off, I don't sleep in, I jump on this, are there any new?
So by
click,
the
click?
next morning at 7
Yep,
AM.
I'm checking again, I'm checking again.
Yeah.
As long as Kate doesn't go to double overtime, I'm checking by 7 AM.
If it is something that requires, like, we would reach out through
Yep.
either phone or email
You
if it's
guys have,
something,
yeah.
or sorry, phone or text if it's something that is an absolute emergency, but we do have regular communication that it's not reasonable to expect Krista to make a call to every single member of council. And we do provide the technology. Excuse me. I think later on, I do mention about getting more training for SharePoint, because we do recognize that it hasn't been an easy transition. We'll touch on that when it comes.
Thank you for recognizing that.
Plus in my comment that I hate it.
We have that highlighted.
Yeah.
No, that's fine.
so any comments on that? Any other?
I hate SharePoint.
Well, we're getting.
Yeah.
We might get 2 votes.
Yeah.
Okay, the next one is the meeting frequency and scheduling, so, generally, the feeling was that it's appropriate. We did have a couple comments regarding, and we learned this lesson from the PAC committee members. Last year, we had a long drought without any meetings, and they felt that they were, not part of anything, there wasn't anything going on, and what's their role, and so the suggestion was we don't go that long without meetings, and we look at, maybe something, well, you'll see the recommendation that there are perhaps some other things you could do, to make sure we're keeping people engaged. And then the second comment that was there was around, and I probably referred to the meetings that were, maybe a couple months apart, that's hard to keep momentum with the
Yeah.
bi-monthly meetings on that. But the general feeling was that, the present scheduling is good, but we do have that ability to add more or not have them if we don't need to, so we get some flexible scheduling. And then to think of or look at other, if there appears to be a period of time in which there hasn't been meetings or not much, that we look at trying to generate some things. And the thought was, especially around educational opportunities or learning more, I mean, we can always take advantage of someone to come in as a speaker, or to have a particular topic of which staff can maybe share more information, just to keep people engaged and to keep flow going a bit. Councilor.
So I'm hoping I'm just seeing the one respondent mentioned it was hard to maintain momentum with bi-monthly meetings, so my apologies if I was the one Debbie Downer on that.
So they were all anonymous, we have no idea who it was.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, then I didn't say it.
So if it,
Are you?
Yeah.
I thought it sounded like.
What you
Yeah.
mean by that, that would be.
And it's an issue that I don't always know how to fix, because I mean, we have so many meetings that pop up, and we're trying, because I know one of my complaints before was, especially just before the election, it seemed like we were having meetings that were switching all over the place. So now we have this nice consistent meeting schedule, which is fantastic for work-life balance in other ways. But I will say, I've got Roger's email sitting there like, hey, what do you want to have on the community development meeting? And I'm just thinking, okay, hopefully I can grab Katie for like 5 minutes or so when we go into recess and just look over that quickly, because having not had a meeting for almost, yeah, and it's just like, what did we do and what have I not done since the last meeting? Yeah, so it's, that becomes hard in just keeping track of where are we and how to keep that momentum moving. So I don't know how to fix it. It's more of just an identified issue at the moment, but, and it does leak onto a couple other things on, if we don't have like the draft minutes from that, leading up to that, it's hard to get a counselor update date on the status of that committee going into committee of the whole. And when that meeting itself is on one Tuesday, and if you don't have the draft minutes, and then you have the committee of the whole the following Tuesday, it's really hard to have that report ready for that committee of the whole over what did you talk about at the last meeting. Yeah, I hope that's more clarity than complaint, but
No, it is clarity, but I'm not gonna make a comment.
yeah, well, it gets one of those challenging things
Yeah.
as well, right, that you have to look at how you can kind of maintain that and what more you need to do. And the reference to the minutes, if we get those out earlier, then that came up in the reporting, like what do you do to reference to build your report? And sometimes if you have to go by memory of the meeting, that is not a good thing, right? Because you may not have remembered it the way it actually occurred, or you may not remember it at all.
Yeah.
And so it's nice to have reference points, and in some cases, we have some really good ones. That insider that comes out on the IMSA, where she summarizes everything, and it's kind of neat and packaged up. But the minutes is probably the most typical place we're gonna go for the record of the meeting, that you can then shorten and put in your report. So it is a challenge not to have that for that report, for sure.
Yeah.
Though not all meetings have minutes available, so a lot of the IMSA organizations you can't use those minutes to write a report, because they don't come out until you get them for the next meeting. You don't get draft minutes to write reports on. Um. It is harder as a chair to make notes while you're chairing a meeting. I can understand that, so just trying to find that balance between well, I guess later on I ask a question as to reviewing the purpose of the reports, and I think that would be a great discussion to have so that there's not a stress over trying to make sure you have the information, but that council's also getting updated on what's happening at those external.
Yeah, Terry, we get the meeting package for the next meeting to less than a week before, and that's the first time you see the minutes from the previous, so it is a bit more challenging.
Yeah.
Are we able to send a survey out to the committee members, maybe to adjust this a bit from this, but to get their feedback as well? I'd like to know what my community members think of how the ones that sit on the different committees, just how they are.
Yeah.
Just to get their feedback, see if we're on the same page. We say we're doing a good job, give yourself a pat on the back, but they may tell you a different story. I just want the full story.
Mhm, yeah.
That's a good suggestion.
Okay, shall we move on to the next one, but, yeah, I think the most valuable piece is the fact that we've taken time to review some of this and we're reflecting on it, right? So
Yeah.
you're better able to figure out how you might wanna do it if you first identified that this is where you're at, and that's the
Yeah.
first step, and there may not be a good solution right now, but the fact that you've recognized it, we can build towards what those might be, so.
Yeah, and understanding even by having this conversation, just making sure that we understand the intention of what was written. And like the mayor said, we're not here to solve the issues tonight. But I think we want to make sure that we've identified the right issues that we need to dig into to look for a better solution for how to make sure that council's getting the information that they're looking for.
And I recommend we change the template to like we had with the survey, the first survey. It didn't work, and that's what we learned.
We've
And then
discussed
the
it.
second one, I was able to put my answers in. I would love to have
Yeah.
that template come up that I can change the date, I can change the key points, and then I could go. That would
I
make
think that
this
was
counselor so happy. I know, I just wanted to put it out there.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. So workload to date, so most of the council feels that the workloads are manageable and appropriate. With members engaged, some express some challenges balancing committee responsibilities with other commitments. And there's concern about redundant reporting, which I think was echoed loud and clear. So redundant reporting and making sure that you have things that you can report, common theme. So one of the recommendations is to just monitor that workload balance as we, I think it's hard to find that right balance as a consistency, but so it's, do you take those downtimes when you get them? Because there's probably gonna be a more at another time. Those are things that we need to discuss on how to make sure that we're not burning people out as well.
As PAC, that's the only thing, and I know it goes in lulls and valleys that you can be busy and get a lot in, and we're doing a lot, and then there's some valleys, and we're just getting our monthly report of how many permits we're getting. But I know again, there's a fine balance of, well, let's meet, but there'll be shorter meetings unless we have a speaker. Okay, we're here and discuss. Thank you all for coming in.
And then explore options to reduce the redundant reporting.
Gotta beware of that is what we, we like. And having nothing to report is okay, putting nothing on the page than putting something on the page that says I have nothing to report. It's, so there's, anyway, that's.
Later on,
Yeah.
I didn't make reference to that one.
We good with that? So participation of counselors and community members, I think the intent of the question was, are we getting the community members participating? We feel it's a positive thing. How are they doing as well? To Councillor Deputy Mayor Roots's point, we didn't ask them. Maybe we should, but we asked ourselves how we feel about our community members. And I think the big challenge is how to include those people that are up there on the corner of the screen. Those virtual members that aren't always at the table, and it is a challenge to remember they're there and to see that they might have their hand up or even to ensure they feel comfortable. Because sometimes if you're the participant that's on the screen, it's hard to feel like you want to interrupt or you haven't heard it very well. I guess there's just challenges. So there's always that, how do we make sure we're trying to engage those people that are there as well? So some issues around that. We talked about looking at how we can provide some tips or assistance for carers to better engage people who are online or involved virtually. Some other things that we did note that kind of came up too, is I think is more so from the staff end, is that people who are visiting or presenting, especially at committee meetings, it's nice to invite them to the table to be part of that, but they're not part of the committee. So you need to kind of be respectful of the fact that there are committee members and there are people who may be visiting that are not committee members. And if they're there to present, well, they present and then they can go to the gallery and listen, or they're not particularly part of the committee for the rest of the night as a participant. So we need to kind of recognize that, because committee members are there based on the process and the fact that they've committed to the committee, and the visitors, not an equal committee member. So recognize when those occasions may occur and do occur. So, and I'm not sure where we're going to find those tips, but we're going to look for those, and hopefully we'll find a place of which we can do. But it's also the fact that we recognize that we now need to be more mindful of it. When you've got that person up in that corner screen, and I find it very challenging. That's why I look to Krista or Jennifer to say, so-and-so just put their hand up, like,
We did talk about potentially having, committee members having to have a camera turned on. So not for staff who are the staff part of the policy, we have a virtual meeting policy. So the staff was when they're speaking or providing input, it's different if they're just listening in to stay involved. But if you have a committee member who always attends virtually, by having their video on, you can interact with them better as a committee member. And so that's one option that we could request of those, and then they're always there, as opposed to if you're not kind of seeing movement on the screen. And maybe there is a different layout or something that could also provide that.
So if we have good internet connection.
Yes.
I do experience that with the IMSA group. It's just,
Yeah.
sometimes it's painful and it's not worth being on the screen, and then,
Don't be a rainy day, don't be a rainy day.
Okay, our favor here, we're committee reporting template and process. So some members find the template easy to use. But many experience technical difficulties, in unintuitive formatting and tight timelines. So there was suggestion that there are delays in receiving meeting minutes, and they hinder timely report preparation. Suggestion include AI summaries and executive summaries in the minutes. Before I move on to the next, I did just want to comment that as someone who reads those AI summary, I'm not a fan of providing those, because I don't think that it gets all the nuance. And if you're using those to write your minutes and you don't understand the context of the discussion that was happening, the way it's written can be very different than how it was actually discussed. That was just one comment. I think it's great to have as a resource. So as long as that is the intention, we're not doing that right now anyway, because the system we were using, we've gotten rid of that one. So we're recording them for minute taking, but not meeting sound. So one of the things that the mayor is alluding to was to make reports, so that it's really just talking about new information. So not just saying that we continue to work on this, and I'm guilty of that, is you just say this is something. So making sure that we're providing new information. It also might cut down on the amount of information that's being presented, so that you're getting the most pertinent information
I'm
that.
sorry, I was just thinking of the fire department, sometimes it is, we are waiting on different, that is what we are, like, we're engaging with other companies or whatever to find out if they will do certain things for us. And then we don't have an answer that day, if there's, or before the next meeting, or it could be a month away before they get an answer. Sometimes we know, sometimes we don't, so.
If it's because you're waiting on something, it's a bit different than just,
Mhm.
we continue to do this, that's part of our day-to-day job. I think is kind of what we were.
Yeah.
discussing,
Again, for the
so
fire
how do
department,
we-
they continue to recruit for new things, I might include that.
Yeah, I
That's,
guess.
that's these are my committees that go committee by committee, that's.
Well, and maybe get feedback, so that was really one participant who mentioned that, so if that's something, that would be good to hear from the rest of council on whether you like to see that, because it shows the things that we're working on, thoughts. And maybe you don't have thoughts right now, but something to think about when we actually dig into some of these recommendations and bring back some work
Sure.
to make things better, but you know,
So we are gonna look at an overhaul of the reporting, the template and the SharePoint stuff, and I mean, some of the other concerns is, where do those reports go after you kind of send them, and if you ever want to see them again, like just where do you file stuff, or, you know, so maybe not everything, especially from my point of view, I'm not sure where I find things that I might have been creating a letter or something, and we're like, I just not always sure how the filing system works on that as much as I do on my home computer.
Thank you, there you,
Right, and
yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's just a little harder to find your way around in there, I find,
Yeah.
and maybe we need more training on that. In the same way with that reporting template, like, is it, I mean, I think I've destroyed a couple of them in creating reports, and then Kristen Jennifer had to go in there and try to resurrect it, and I said, well, I just kind of thought I filled out the report, like, it's just.
I love fun like that, trying to just take away and then it was gone.
Yeah.
It's like, I no longer have my template
See,
there.
that's what we're running
Yeah.
in with the job forms, like you can do a job form every time, but you can't. It's to go back and if you wanted to pull up your old one,
Mhm.
like you send the job form.
Yeah.
To me or an email, and then you would get a copy of it in your email, but I don't know whether you can edit that, you get do that, so that's another layer, like the job form is great, you can do it and send it, but if you wanted to go back. You know how you pull up your old one, see
Yeah.
what you reported the last time and do that, so that's why I haven't sent out the job. form.
Yeah.
That was gonna be my, oh, this is gonna be this disable, but then there was that next level that after mayor mentioned it, where do I find these, and I was like. Oh, well, that's a bit.
Yeah, like I'm guilty, last committee of the whole, I had my regular community development report to send in. And then Adam, you were away, so I should have sent in one for PAC. I didn't get either in, but the last time that I sent one in, because I couldn't get the templates to work right on the iPad. I ended up just sending the document to myself, to my work computer, and then had to do it on my work computer and sent it through. And then I was worried that it wasn't going to come through right, so then I printed off copies before I came. But then I thought, I'm gonna have, you know, 2 tech people in either company probably slapping my wrist for the fact that I'm swapping documents back and forth between 2 systems that aren't necessarily supposed to do that, so. Yeah, it got in the way of trying to make that work.
So I didn't do it to my work, I was like, yeah, if one doesn't catch it, the other one will, and we'll get that, what do you do?
And if Broker Link is listening to this recording, I didn't actually do that, I'm just joking. Yeah.
So we're gonna work that, I mean, it's gonna take some time to sort that out and get kind of figure that out a little bit more
But
about the
that-
reporting piece.
but that is a point to make, that not everyone is completing reports, so. We have this requirement and we don't have one for every committee, and what is the expectation on counselors to provide those, so. Someone who's not doing them isn't getting a slap on the wrist for not doing them, we're just not getting them and having them put up. That might be fine for council, but that would be something we'd be looking for some feedback on.
Yep.
And there's also a varying level of content that's provided. We get 4 pages for some and we get a couple of bullet points for another, and that's. I can't tell you which one's better. I think it would be good for council to revisit the purpose of the committee report, so. I had sort of recommended it as a way to make sure that we had discussions where for our IMSA organizations, the members of council are, part of their role is to make sure that council is being informed of the things that they're doing. So this was a way to do that. But it seems to be causing more issues and frustration, so how do we improve that? So I think we should go back and revisit the purpose and then how we can improve that process, like our draft minutes, okay for committee, sub-council updates, those types of things.
And I will say too, I don't, until Krista had mentioned it, even though I had chaired the PAC, I hadn't even considered doing a report for PAC until that was right in front of me, and then it was just a moment of crap. I don't have time to get that in right now. I hadn't thought of that at all.
Where I'm the opposite, if I've not been at the meeting, I'm not the person to update you, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so there's a difference too, I think, between external committees we're on, that nobody else gets the minutes or information on, versus a committee of council that we can easily share those meetings minutes with everybody, and you can read them without it being there, that maybe we don't need people reporting on those ones, versus the external ones, that there's an expectation in your role as being a member of the library board or whatever area or whatever, that you do need to report back. So we'll have some more thought about that when we have this whole conversation. How, and then how would you report based on what we could use for a form to do that and make it clearer, so. In the meantime, we'll just continue with this. Okay, next one is the action item and meeting breaks. I think everybody appreciates the meeting breaks. I don't think anybody had a problem with that.
I got back to bringing food, so.
And that's very nice that we can, that we have treats.
I feel like it was 8 years on council before somebody said, why don't we just take a break partway through?
Yeah.
So you know what you got.
And the action items was a new piece as well, and then there are senses we do appreciate those. There was a comment about more specific updates on those action items, so the recommendation is you'll see one, we continue our breaks and we will, and we'll do them kind of as they fit, which is one is coming very soon. And then the other one is around the action items, and are we okay with that? The amount of reporting there, do we want to see more information? Or is that kind of process we have quite okay?
I think what we have right now, that.
It hasn't been forgotten, this is how, like, when it comes back, it hasn't been forgotten, can't be addressed, other than, like I said, me putting a star by it now every time, I know.
Yeah.
It's been addressed, and now it's off, or it's in progress, it's better than, or not started, even knowing that something hasn't been started, so that you can bring it back around, right?
There was a comment about specific updates on action items, so I wasn't sure if there was wanting to receive more of a report as opposed to putting it in a comment, and some of that might depend on the actual action item. So if
Guess mine is.
anyone has anything to share or provide more detail later on, maybe suggestions for what we can do to improve that.
You can always feel free to ask questions. I'll give you them right for more detail. So any thoughts on that? Later, Tom, again, this is a bit of work in progress too, so we don't have to resolve everything tonight.
We're not going to.
Exactly.
I just think with the meeting end times, we looked
That's where we're going now.
Yeah, okay.
Jennifer?
Yeah, so there seem to be some varied opinions, but favorable to a flexible approach. Most support a target end time of 9:30 to 11 PM with the possibility of an extension by vote. Budget meetings may warrant stricter limits with scheduled continuations. Staff identified 9:30 as being a reasonable target for ending meetings with flexibility to extend by vote and based on remaining agenda items. So recommendation is to monitor remaining time and the remaining agenda items for priority. And one of the things that we do for council, but it could be something also considered for committees, is the mayor and I really look at agenda items, and it was one thing that we did for committee of the whole meetings, moving the new business before the reports, so that you're fresher and hopefully getting the things that need to be addressed that evening out of the way, and then moving the things that if you had to postpone them, or maybe were an update and didn't require, you know, freshness, could be later in the agenda. And we also try to, this was a lengthier agenda, but I think, you know, reasonable time so far. Looks like a pretty long agenda, but I think some of the items were shorter ones that we were able to.
I think one of the things we did certainly learn at budget time is we can't have extended budget discussions on top of our regular meeting. So I know that was mentioned here as one of the, and that was absolutely where we ran into. We can't be making budget decisions at 11 o'clock at night. I mean, we just won't do that anymore. We'll keep those separate. So when they start up in the fall or early in the new year, we'll be looking at scheduling that kind of stuff. Deputy Mayor.
We get an agenda package, we asked before if we're gonna add that. We also have an camera package. Could we get an in-camera package, whether it's an email just to the counselors or the yellow binder, so that when you get here, you'd have your questions ready and that, so maybe that part would go quicker. I find sometimes these meetings go great and it's the in-camera that takes longer because we're not as prepared where before we used to get a little more information and do what we're coming to do. That's all I'm asking for.
Yeah. Absolutely. Sometimes we don't have any information to provide before, but I
Yep.
think absolutely noted.
Yeah, where we have a package of information, we actually, well, I think that's a good point. We try to get that out as a confidential.
Yes.
Separate.
Yep.
And.
Yeah, I know that's some. I do. So that is something we have to consider, because I know some councils have absolutely have it in policy that they don't share anything electronically that's in camera. It's hard copy. I don't think we've had issues here, and we do try to watermark everything, so if you did try to share it with someone, it would be clear that the information you shared came from an in-camera, but, that was one of the reasons why we were kind of moving away from sharing electronically, but I've kind of been taking the approach of the severity of the in-camera and what might be shared ahead of time. But absolutely, point taken, it's hard to have thorough conversations in camera on items if you're just receiving the information and haven't had time to digest it. So even presenting it at one meeting to even discuss at another or something like that should be considered depending on the information, so that you can have that time for sure.
And when there's simply updates in your package, we could do, I don't even think we'll just do the update. So tell you at the start of the meeting, we're going in camera for the update because they're not expected to be long discussions. It's just.
Update,
Here we
no
are.
going in it. Just
So
an
we
update.
have a couple of those tonight.
Great.
And in those cases where we need to do more discussion, we'll try to get the package out.
Thank you so much.
Remember that it is in camera.
Yep.
That's the other piece. Okay, number 9 is the open public sessions before meetings, and we threw that out there because some other counselors do that. They have a session prior to council where they citizens can come and ask questions or bring up any issues. There was people who did not want to do that, and some thought that might be okay. Our recommendation, since we didn't really have any strong consensus on that, that we do have a policy where if a public member of the public wants to speak to council, that they can send in a request. We will put them on the agenda and they can speak. And we'll know what it is they're speaking about, because sometimes there are people who want to come and it's not an appropriate place to be sharing what they want to share. It's better off for them to meet with a staff person or council or the mayor or somebody different, because their topic is not relevant to the council table, and we would screen that out. And in other cases where it's a relevant shareable item, then we would put them on the agenda and they could speak. But we felt that at this point, we didn't have consensus to allow just an open public forum prior to the meeting. Council Walsh.
would it be appropriate to ask Pat for thoughts on that as the one person who shows up?
Well,
I followed along all this time and, wait, and if anybody, when I'm talking sometimes with the public, I'll say, well, if you have something you wish to bring up to council or whatever, and be like you say, do up a letter. Put it in, let them know what you wanna speak about, and like you say, individually you could talk to them and, or if it's something for the meeting, and people are fine like that. I think you should stay like that if you.
thank you, Pat. Thank you.
I appreciate your feedback on that, 'cause I want to know how far off base we might be, but.
I agree. But you just. Person would ask a question, then it gets on something else, and then something else, and maybe, so.
Yeah, yep. I'm concerned with it. But any other comments on that one?
If you just leave it open from the beginning, you get anybody talking about anything at any time, right? Like, so.
That's what would happen.
Yeah, and like, I hate to say it, but there are crazy things there, right? Like, so I may.
But not Berwick.
I may be one of them. So I think the way we're doing it now is the right way to do it.
Okay, fine, then we'll continue with that one and we'll move on to,
So counselor announcements on the agenda, so there did seem to be strong support for this. So we are recommending that we pilot the counselor announcements agenda item at the end of the meeting and identify a time limit and focus on community events and activities.
My thing is put it at the beginning of the meeting, you put, I don't care if it's 3 minutes, 4 minutes, but that's what you get as a council. You may not have nothing, but I'd like to see that at the beginning. I just know with other places. I was happy, I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget, but that's the only thing.
the thought was we would do it at the end, so we got our most important business done first, and then that item, if we needed to shorten it up to make quicker announcements, we would, depending on how late we are, versus taking up a whole lot of time at the start and then not have as much time or energy to deal with an important council piece of business, because it's now 9:30 or 10 o'clock and we spent an hour talking about announcements at the start. So that was the thought about doing it at the end. Councilor Wong.
I just want to say, I do see Deputy Mayor Lutz's point, though, in that we often dwindle in population to make those announcements. I mean, normally we've got Pat, but normally at this point in the meeting too, we've really just got Pat. So if we did have 3 minutes, and not all of us will have announcements at the beginning too. I like the idea. I know it was something I feel like my first term we practiced a bit more of. And I think Zoom meetings for 2 years in the pandemic kind of killed that. But if it was something that was more practice, I don't think it would be that harmful. And I think that even at like 2 minutes per counselor.
I'm thinking, put us on the clock, you literally have 2 minutes and.
Yeah.
Other thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I agree with that. Just put a time limit on it. You got 2 minutes, make your announcement, move on.
Yep, you choose, as council, you're choosing the ones you want to get out.
This is meetings. If it's the
Good,
committee.
good point. Yeah, committee of the whole or
Yeah.
council?
I almost feel like maybe council might be more appropriate because committee of the whole is such a big agenda.
And before, first thing or last thing?
Can we try first thing, and if it's not working and we find things are at the end, then I'm willing to adjust at that point, but I was happy tonight that they were to get that quick announcement out, so I thank you for that.
So I appreciate your comment about time limit, because there is somebody, sits in the chair that has to hold you to that time. And he will have to do that if you find we're going over.
Yeah,
sure. Okay, well, if we're okay with that, we'll try that. Next agenda, we'll have, councilor announcement. Okay,
Yeah, they better pick your time limit. What's it gonna be?
2 minutes.
2 minutes, I think we're fine.
Can't wait till then to decide.
No,
thank you, good point.
Yeah.
We have 2 minutes is our maximum.
I think, you know, we're Nova Scotians, we can talk really fast when we have to. And there are a lot of so. Yeah.
How about this? At the 2 minute mark, you say time, and then the counselor gets another 15 seconds. to
No.
Finish up, no?
2 minutes.
2 minutes, okay. All right. fair enough.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, it's just, come the whole,
And it is related to community events and activities.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like, that's not well, personal stuff, it's not anything, or an issue you might have heard from somebody on the street, right?
No.
This is something that you're aware of in the community that you want to share, because where I've seen this and it seems to be most effective is the county councils, where the people, the councilors come from different districts. So this person is sharing something about on the shore in Hants County, and this one's talking about Falmouth. So they're not all from the same community, so, so we're sharing things though, knowing that, and we won't repeat yourself.
No.
So we don't need 7 minutes sharing the fact that it's Lions breakfast on Saturday morning. So,
I get that.
okay, yeah, great. Land acknowledgement statement then. Just me? Yeah, okay, so we had, it seemed to be, most people felt that we should continue our efforts to consult with the Annapolis Valley First Nations before we do adopt a statement. And we have been trying, I sent a message out to her just the other day again, and they're continuing to work on trying to find a date for us. So I have no idea when that will be, that's probably the 4th either email conversation or text I've had with somebody down there. And this is the one that it was suggested she would be the best person to make this happen, so. Everywhere.
But do we not have organizations that when we go to the conferences, they always have one? I'm fine once we get a meeting to make it the way we all both agree, but I feel at this point we should be not only doing an acknowledgement, and we have another organization we partner with, we should be able to use theirs until we make this meeting. I think that that would be nice to do the acknowledgement.
Well, the feeling was from the group that that's not the case.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I've done a lot of research on land acknowledgements, and I would say that until we've done the consultation and make it meaningful to our place and be specific, be able to be specific and et cetera, it's not worth the time you spent making it. It isn't effective, so we need to do it right.
And that seemed to be the majority feeling from the survey.
Okay.
Okay. And moving on, we now are on general feedback on procedures.
Yeah, so
Final comment.
basically, it was good feedback, but definitely room for improvement on reporting. So I didn't say that here, but there was strong staff support and committed counselors' contribute to our effective, like it was acknowledged that that's what's gonna keep us moving forward. So I should have updated here. Oh, I did, okay. Opportunities exist to enhance communication, streamline reporting, and improve inclusivity and formalize certain procedural elements. So I think that we've identified the things we need to work on, and we'll figure out some times to pick away at those things and what reporting or facilitation we need to have the discussion around some of those items.
One last question, just because I work other places. So besides typing it out, which I am a 2-finger, do we have something where I could put and speak into a mic and that would go up for it? So I could do this in a much quicker time than
Do that
the,
on there.
can you do it on there? I can't, someone would have to show me because that's not my areas of expertise, but I'd be happy to have that and be able to do that. It would be.
Little mic in the corner.
Yeah, all right.
So- Hey, Adam, what's up?
Wonderful. Thank you so much. This was very productive. Learn something new every day.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much for that, and we'll do this on a regular basis. I thought 6 months in after implementing some new things would be a good time to do it. We'll decide we need to do it again in another 6 months, or we'll continue to have formats where we can check in with each other. Okay, there is no correspondence. For council, there may be some correspondence that is for the file that we didn't, as you know, we have 2 forms of correspondence, one that we bring to the table, one that we just put in the file that you can read at your leisure. So we do not have any council correspondence. The mayor's report is there. There is one thing I want to highlight that isn't there. I did miss the June 5th active transportation consultation meeting on here, and I think that's it's very relevant. If you have not had an opportunity to participate in one of those that occurred last weekend, you should go online and have a look and provide some feedback. There's a fair bit of work and design that's gone into bike lanes and active transportation routes in town and on our streets, Commercial Street, Cottage Street, Main Street. So, I think it's well worth having a look and councilors being aware of that. And it's an opportunity. There's a couple of options in Commercial Street, so there's a chance to provide some feedback on that as well. And the other thing that I wanted to mention, we are now into summer dress code season for meetings coming forward. And we typically, ties are not required, less formal attire, short attire, starting next meeting.
I was gonna say, you could have said that at the top of the meeting.
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of renovation, I honestly just couldn't find a time.
And unless there's any questions, sorry, Dan.
I did just want to comment though, we did discuss that formal attire for everyone does not necessarily, or business attire for everyone does not necessarily mean a tie.
No, that's true.
I did
Yes.
just want to point that out.
Yeah. Everyone.
Just that June 4th wasn't up there, that you did have representation for the Pride Racing flag.
Oh, yeah, I wasn't there, but thank you for those two that did attend on our behalf. Yes, Councilor Quackanack and Deputy Mayor Roots were both there. And also with tomorrow, there is the flag raising here. And yeah, Councilor Quackanack is gonna, you'll be behind us any meeting, it's at 10 o'clock.
I can't make that meeting.
You're not coming?
I can't make it. I got 2 car appointments. So it's my wife's car. I'm like,
Yeah, tomorrow morning at 10.
Good.
Yeah, it'll be a bonus if I show up, I cannot commit to it.
If there's any formal requirements, Councilor Quackanack will fill them in. I guess she's gonna touch base with you or Taylor in the morning. Okay. Unless there's any other questions on anything on there?
I had one important question from your report, Mike. Where is the Red Fox Cider?
Oh, okay, yeah, I was invited to that. It's over in Woodville.
Okay.
Yeah, she sent me an email to see if I'd come over and, I didn't have any, I thought there was gonna be an opening, but there wasn't. She was too busy. It was full out, so it's next to Nickerson's, what is it, Honey Farm or whatever on Brooklyn
Okay.
Street in
Yeah.
Woodville. And it's pumped right out in the orchard. And they have an outdoor area where you can sit and have cider, and there's an indoor spot with a number of tables, and yeah, it's
I noticed them putting up their grand opening sign and haven't been by since, so I, realized when it was.
all right. Okay, so if there's no other questions of that, we will have a motion. No, we won't. We will have a break and then we'll have a motion to go in camera. So break time, and back in 5 minutes or so, and
Them or some. Sending, I'm sending, although I know some of you have it, I'm gonna send it to everyone.
is that the one down the road?
Yeah. Bye, Pat, thanks for coming. We've spent all day with you.
I know, I took a break though. Thank you, it was a good meeting.
Thanks.
Thanks, Pat.